Yo, what's going on, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of Bets and Banter. This week, we are, of course, talking about UFC London, and we've got two great guests with whom we are going to be talking about the card. So without further ado, let's bring them in. Let's introduce our guy, our recurring guest, friend of the show. You know him, you love him. He's back again this week, the Jewish Better. How are you, brother?
L'chaim, my dude, what's going on?
We got people in the comments section accusing you of fighting on Saturday night. I mean, what's the story here? Are you cutting weight? Are you ready to go? What's the deal?
Red Fox, man. I don't know nothing about what you guys are saying in the comments. I have no idea who that is.
Oh, dude. With that being said, let's bring in our other guest, the man of mystery, the man of the hour, Big Bird, D1 Diakiese himself. Welcome aboard, brother. How are you?
Doing great, man. It's an honor to be a part of this show, Liam. Looking forward to some fights across the pond, and let's get into it.
Absolutely, man. Can't wait to get started. We got 15 fights, no time to dilly-dally. And frankly, folks, I got a bet on this first one. So why don't we kick it off there at 125 pounds, where Daniel Barez is making his UFC debut, and he's taking on Jafel Filho. And if you guys checked out my first look this week, this is a fight where I talked about the fact that Filho had impressed me. You know, he went out there against Makhachev. He had grappled very well. But then I go back and I rewatch the fight, and the striking looked kind of basic. He threw a lot of calf kicks that were being read by Makhachev. He got out of the way of most of his strikes. And so a lot of the time that Makhachev was engaging in the grappling, it's because he's a grappling first fighter. I feel like in this fight, Barez is a guy who's much more willing to push a striking pace on the feet. And so I feel like Barez is a live underdog in this fight. I do think he can win this fight by knockout. He's got a lot of power in his hands, a lot of finishes for the division. The red flag here, of course, is number one, he's making his UFC debut. And number two, he is a guy who's 34 years of age in a lighter weight division. Things that don't tend to work out well over time. But I think his motivation is at an all-time high. I think the guy's coming in with a lot of aggression, a lot of intention. I think he's a dangerous fighter. So ultimately, when I rewatched the tape and I saw the Carlos Hernandez fight where he was put in a ton of bad situations, could have quit there easily in round two. He came back out in round three and made it an honest scrap, fought through being tired. He just seems like a guy with a lot of heart, a lot of grit. And Filho, in his last fight, almost got the finish. And when he didn't get it, he just folded up, gave up the submission. Makhachev on one leg, the guy literally couldn't walk around the fight after, but he was still able to get the win, get the finish there because he had more heart. And so it's not to say Filho's a bad fighter at all, but he fought a bunch of inexperienced guys. Barez has had over 20 professional fights. He's ready to go right now. He doesn't need any more experience. I think Barez gets the win here on Saturday night, plus 105. I took a shot earlier today, posted that up on Patreon, but I said I would discuss it on the show, and there you have it. I think that Barez is the side here at plus money, and the line has, contracted a lot, but I think it's going to close pick 'em or a little bit favor to Barez, and so I like the Barez side. Let's kick it to our guy, Big Bird. How do you feel about this fight? If I'm not mistaken, you crushed the line movement on this one. What do you think, brother?
Yeah, so I bet it like 2 weeks ago. I bet Daniel Barez. They opened him up at like plus 285, threw 2 units on that. And I was a little bit surprised with the opener, but that was just from my memory of the Carlos Hernandez fight because I remember he had a competitive fight with Carlos. And I mean, look at Carlos. He's doing good things in the UFC. And then I run the tape, and it's like my thoughts, they were still true because it's like when I look at Filho, I mean, I tried to fade him on the Contender Series versus Roybert. I feel like Roybert man, I thought Roybert had that, but he decided to play with the jiu-jitsu a little too much and, don't trust goat shed. I guess that's the motto. But I mean, Filho, the thing is with him, he's better than I actually thought he was. I thought he was horrible, like Jesus Aguilar level bad. But when I watched the tape, his jiu-jitsu, it's decent, but it's like outside of like him trying to take the back, it's like his striking leaves a lot to be desired. I know he got the knockout over Roybert. That was clean. But on the feet, I feel like it's Barez all day. And the story of the fight's honestly going to be whether Barez can keep Filho off his back. And watching tape on Barez, I know he's not fighting the best guys in UWC, but I like the dude striking, man. He rips the body really well, and I feel like a good weapon for him in this fight is going to be the calf kicks. Filho does not like checking calf kicks, and I feel like if Barez can keep it on the feet, box him up, if he entertains the grappling, that's where it gets a little bit sketchy because it's like Filho can he'll go for leg locks, he'll get reversals. So it's like if I'm Barez, I'm just sprawling and brawling, and I'm thinking he's going to get the first round knockout. And for like, if it gets extended, I don't think either of these dudes have a cardio advantage. I mean, we did see Barez slow down in the Contender Series fight with Carlos a little bit in a fight that I thought he won, but I don't think either guy has a cardio advantage. I'll take the dude that's got, honestly, probably more past the victory. I can see Barez getting top time as well. So I'll take Daniel Barez at a pick him right now. I would line him maybe like minus 130, minus 140.
Man, I'm completely agreeing with you here. You know, I would maybe be slightly more conservative just because I always go with the data points that are outside of my like qualitative analysis, like things like age, where I'm like, you know, I have some concerns. But even then, I just can't get to a point where this is like not a pick 'em price for Barez because he's got more experience. He's a super dangerous guy. And to your point, Roybird had some success. Like he had a lot of success. He had good positions. Makayev almost finished him multiple occasions, in my opinion, where he had the wrist ride and he was punching him cleanly from the top position. I just don't like the reactions I see from Filho when he's not being the hammer in his fights. He's a big confidence fighter, but he's been finished in the third round multiple times, to your point. So I think a lot of people are expecting a cardio edge because he almost got a sub in round 3. But then you look at the record, the guy's 5-2 in his last 7 fights since 2017. And in the same amount of time, Barez has had 10 fights. So he's older, but he's more active and doing better. 9-1 over that same stretch. So I think you're making a lot of great points. Jewish Better, are we out to lunch or are you agreeing here? Is it a unanimous panel on Daniel Barez?
I like the Barez side, man. I like a lot of what I see from him. I do agree that low calf kick would be a good weapon for him to use in this fight. Like my man Pierce said, the thing I like about him is he's super physical for the weight class. Even though he's a 34-year-old debutant, he has a lot of power for a puncher at flyweight, and he's very, like I said, very physical. If you watch the Carlos Hernandez fight, when he goes for takedowns in that fight, I mean Hernandez is really good at getting back to his feet. I don't know if Filho is going to have that same game plan. He tends to play a little bit of jiu-jitsu, and I think he was doing all the right things. You saw him go for the crossface, go for the whizzer, try and defend the takedowns. But Barez is just a beast, man. He just bulldozed through Carlos Hernandez, was able to get top time in that fight. And I think that's going to be able to win him rounds in this fight. I think he has the striking advantage too, and the physicality, like I said. Like, obviously, you know, he is 34 years old, but I think that's not, like, over the hill. And this is his first fight, and I think he has a winnable matchup here. Even the fights you could say he's fighting low competition outside the UFC, but he's getting knockouts in the first round in all those fights. So he's doing what he's supposed to do at the end of the day. So I got to go first fight here. I got to go with Barez, and it's easier to beat these early markets, not the later the card goes, because these are less bet on fights. So a lot of money has came in on Barez. Some of it, my man Pierce at plus 285. So you see a lot of sharp action coming in, and I think some action will come back on the Filho side, so it'll be just good enough to get in on some Barez.
Absolutely, and I do think it's going to end up closing pick, but at a certain point, the value is going to be extracted, right? Like if our guy Pierce could have got it at plus 2xx, do you really want to take it once it flips to chalk? But again, I thought any plus money here was good. Feel like he should be a slight favorite here based on his level of experience. So overall, we're going to have to wait and see on Saturday. But I think that you've done your job, Pierce. And then I'm happy with the number that I got. Didn't bet it for a huge amount, just a half unit shot here. But I think Barez is aside, and I'm willing to find out. So let's find out.
I will say one more thing on this fight before we go.
Please go ahead.
So I'm looking at it right now. So Bet Online has Barez KO plus 550. I don't think that's a bad way to approach it. I mean, you see in a lot of his recent fights, he's finding the knockout, and it's like if I think Barez is a lot better striker, it's a good flyer.
It's even 6-1 in some places. I put together a list of props. It's basically I was selling Jewish Better about 30 props that I want to investigate further a little bit before I bet them. But that was one of them that stuck out to me like a sore thumb as well. 6-1 on a guy who's just out there throwing hands every fight. And Filho probably has the grappling advantage here theoretically, so he's going to want to stick to his advantages on the feet. He's got a lot of power, so I would not be surprised if that's what he tries to leverage here. Also a guy that's constantly looking for the finish, so I like that shot. He rocked Carlos Hernandez, too. Let's not forget, Carlos Hernandez, tough guy, durable. He was rocked in that fight on a couple occasions and ended up clinching and doing a couple things smart to prevent, further damage. But now let's move along to this women's strawweight fight. And we've got an Irish girl here, Shauna Mama B Bannon. woman after my own heart here. I was making that joke. 5-0, making her UFC debut here against Bruna Brazil. And Bruna Brazil was the talk of the town before her last fight. Denise Gomes, shocks the world, goes on this run, couple big wins now in a row. I do think people are forgetting she did get out wrestled by Loma Lupunmi. Let's not get out over the ski. She's still young. She's still putting it together. She still projects very high. She's got power for WMMA, which is a rare skill and attribute. But we've also seen Waregi hurt in the past. So that's something where, it was kind of in the record book. And then for Bruna Brazil, she beat Marna Manic on the Contender Series. That seemed like, a very winnable fight for her in a lot of ways. Tons of anthropomorphic advantages. We love that expression on the show. And that was really what you saw from Bruna Brazil. She could kick her from very far away. In this fight, the reach advantage here is going to go to Shauna Bannon, and she likes to compete at kicking range. So for me, I didn't feel like Bruna Brazil had huge advantages here. And then I thought to myself, I was like, man, how long has it been since Bruna Brazil last fought? Because she just got effed up. And it was in April. So she literally got knocked out in April, and now she's making this 3-month turnaround. She's posting videos of her training with dogs trying to bite her face and stuff. Craziness all over the place on the Bruna Brazil side for me. So I think Bruna, very good athlete, dangerous girl, but I do not like her in this fight at chalk prices. I think she's still got a lot to prove. I think she's still got a lot of growing to do as a fighter as well. So Shauna Bannon here could be in a banana peel spot. She's a UFC debutante. We see them a lot of times the bed, just don't show up like themselves. But I feel like if she competes hard here, I liked what I saw from her when she's under pressure, which is she throws a 1-2 down the middle. And if she does that here, I think she's going to connect with a lot of clean strikes. So I like the Shauna Bannon side here, but I haven't bet it, honestly. I'm just waiting to see what happens. Maybe it's my Irish bias. So let's see what my guy Jewish Better thinks about this one, brother. Am I out to lunch?
Yeah, I mean, I like Bruna Brazil in this spot if I have to pick a side. She's a slight favorite, but I think it's a little bit priced right now. It's women's MMA, so you always got to be careful. But I think she has the athleticism advantage. When I see her to Shauna Bannon, she's just a little bit too slow for my liking. And I think Bruna Brazil is going to have a big speed advantage. Both these girls kind of throw primarily kicks. It's not really boxing. Bannon comes out with a Taekwondo style. She's kind of just throwing push side kicks from range, scoring points, almost like a Ketlen Shakagian type ordeal with a little less boxing. I think Bruna Brazil is just more athletic. She's going to have the more strong kicks, more athletic on the outside. And I just don't like Bannon from what I see from her. I feel like she's in these close fights with girls who aren't even UFC level. Her best win is against the girl that went 2 fights with Jin Yu Fry, who's completely fallen off. And even in that fight, the other girl had moments. So I think Bruna Brazil already had the 2 fights inside the UFC octagon. I know they kind of, are promoting Shauna Bannon. She's training with Molly McCann. She's the Irish fighter. It's in Europe. But I just think it's a good bounce back win spot for Brazil here. I'm not going to knock her for losing to Gomes. We just really didn't expect that from Gomes, those 2 knockout wins back to back. So good point. She is fighting a few months after that knockout loss. Will that make her a little bit more tentative? It's women's MMA. I haven't placed a bet on this yet, but I think Bruna Brazil seems like the side here.
I think she got taken down, knocked down, outlanded by 45 strikes or something. Like Denise Gomes routed her. It wasn't a very competitive fight at all. But again, I'm interested to see. It's a fun, competitive women's fight to kick things off. What do you think about this one, Pierce?
Yeah, I'm going to be honest. So I've been a little busy with Cage Wars this week, so I didn't tape all these fights. And I mean, I watched when the line first came out. I saw it was like a pick 'em, and I'm like, okay, let me just peep a couple Shauna Bannon fights because I've never seen her fight. And I'm like 2 fights in, and I'm like, what the fuck am I doing? I honestly don't like her at all. I mean, if she wasn't hot and had an ass, would she even be in the UFC? I don't think so. But I did play a little Bruna Brazil on Monday for the KO. I didn't play her money line because she burned me last fight. I'm not going to bother with the money line again, but I sprinkled the KO for plus 550. I mean, I don't think Bannon's that good. What is she going to do, like a little karate from range for 15 minutes? I mean, Bruna Brazil, she seems like she has talent. Like, I bet her on the Contender Series versus Man, and I bet her against Gomez. I mean, Gomez is probably just better than the market agrees, but I'm not putting my money on Shauna Bannon. I think she's an Instagram fighter, and I don't think she's that good. Bruna Brazil by KO. Play a little money line small, but I mean, It's women's MMA. I learned the hard way last year, and I've tried to fix it this year. We're not laying chalk in women's MMA. Just leave it alone. That's what I'm doing.
You're a wise man. Sage advice there. It's better for your mental health, certainly, to pick your spots. You don't have to bet every WMMA underdog. If you guys don't feel it with Shauna, obviously just let this one go. Look for the prop market. I honestly thought about betting the ends by KO here, because I think Bruna Brazil is going to try and come back with a little bit of a point to prove. She got smoked in her last fight. She's posting the videos with the dog. She's getting real aggressive, going for the ground and pound. And then on the other side, Shauna Bannon is saying, if you listen to her media, I'm going to knock her out in the second round, which is the same thing that happened against Denise Gomes. She's saying, I'm going to kick her in the head and I'm going to knock her out. And I'm like, I mean, how wrong could you be? F it. Like, I honestly was not impressed by Bruna Brazil on rewatch. Like, the Marna Manic fight, it's just like a gimme. Just like looking back at it, a girl that throws big kicks against a girl that's like at her waist length. It's like, it just seems in hindsight like they wanted to get her in the UFC. God bless her for it. But I'm just not sold on the experiment yet. So I do think she's more athletic, no doubt about that. But I don't think she's as tough as Shauna Bannon. That's kind of – I saw Shauna Bannon put in a couple of awkward positions and fight back and want to win the fight really bad. And I saw Bruna Brazil kind of just shell up when she was getting shelled on. So I'm interested to see. This is going to be the highest level of resistance for Bannon. But, again, you're getting plus money to find out. She was a big chalk in her last couple of fights as well. The only fights where there were odds. So, she's been handling the job accordingly. And she trains with Patty Houlihan, who's a former UFC fighter. Flyweight. So I don't think that she's completely fraudulent, but we'll find out.
I got a fun fact for Patty Houlihan. He had a main event in the UFC back in the day versus our boy Luis Smolka.
Yeah, he got roasted in that fight.
That might be the highest level main event I've seen in across the pond, probably to date.
Dude, I love a good old flyweight scrap. That was when Luis Smolka was still doing the damn thing and could take a punch a little bit better as well. Patty Houlihan's fun, though. And honestly, that's the thing that's cool is it's his first fighter to make it to the UFC. He's been coaching for a little while now. So interested to see how Ireland fares when it's not SBG Ireland in the corner. I think that's something interesting to watch as well. So I'm willing to give him a chance. Next up, we got Chris Duncan, ATT Zone, taking on Yanal Ashmoz, who may or may not be on the show, depending on who you listen to in the comment section. So this is going to be a fun one, guys. I mean, Chris Duncan, he's broken my heart. I got him once, right? I bet Slava, but then he broke my heart so bad when I tried to fade him with Charlie Campbell, 3 units at minus 150. I was basically already cashing the ticket in my mind when my dude got absolutely flatlined, and I was as shocked as all the people in the crowd. If you guys have ever seen that reaction shot from the people that were from Long Island in the crowd, like,
dude, it was funny.
That was me, bro. That was me at my house.
Dude, it was funny. The commentators go, "Oh, that's awesome," and they go to like a cut of his family.
Yeah,
bro, they did him dirty. Charlie Campbell's the boy, though. He did get a win recently in CFFC, but it's a little sad seeing that, man. Because I thought he would have been in the UFC. He'd be a great fighter in the UFC, but it's MMA, man. Stuff happens.
Absolutely. And what that told me, though, is Chris Duncan, crazy will to win, right? The guy is an absolute savage. And also, he's got a lot of power, like even more power than I gave him credit for, because a lot of times he goes to decision, he tries to fight conservatively. But when his back is up against the wall, the dude is like, all right, it's time to swing. Like, my life depends on it. And then he killed a man. So, like, Chris Duncan, he can really diddy bop. No question about it. The guy looks like he's in incredible physical shape and also doing extra legal things to do that. But God bless him for it. In any case, I feel like in this spot, I don't know what to make of it, except that it seems like the market is having a little bit of a, what would you call it? Overreaction to a first round knockout that sometimes happens. I think there's a little bit still that we don't know about, Ashmoz at this level. I do think it's going to be a hard competitive fight, though. I don't really feel comfortable laying this kind of chalk price with Chris Duncan. So I'm going to kick it over to my guy Pierce and see, do you have any stronger thoughts on this fight? Because as of now, I'm planning on leaving this one alone.
We're going to me first on this one? We're going
I am, dude. I am, dude. Have you never heard of save the best for last, brother?
Hey, I don't know. Maybe the people want to hear what Yanal has to say about his fight. But little birdie told me that it's not good. but we'll let him talk about that. But in this fight here, I mean, Chris Duncan, I've honestly tried to fade both these fighters. And my thought process is can't fade a fade with a fade, not a barber now. But yeah, with Chris Duncan, I mean, he's so hittable to like the point where it's like he leaves himself open so much. But like you said, he has a will to win, and I respect that. He's going to go out on his shield, even though he might get dropped 3 times by Charlie Campbell and somehow pull something out of his ass. He's going to fight for your dollar. But, I mean, in this matchup, I'm passing. I wanted to play Yanal, but it's like he's not a good striker. I mean, I tried to fade Sam Patterson. I tried to fade Yanal versus Sam Patterson. I still think Patterson was the side, but, you know, he caught him. He caught the kick and landed the left hook, and Patterson went to sleep. That was a very weird fight, especially after when Patterson was trying to fight off the ref, Marc Goddard. So I guess Yanal cracks, but
I knocked him the fuck out, bro.
Well, Yanal, if since you're here right now, man, if you want to win this fight, just keep grabbing the cage like you normally do in all your fights, and you know, maybe, but if Yanal, I mean, Chris Duncan's gonna go out on a shield to win. Yanel's gonna grab the cage and cheat to win. So you got someone that's gonna you got 2 people that are gonna fight for your dollars. So maybe it's a dog or pass. But for me, it's either Duncan decision or maybe Yanal knocks him out because Duncan gets dropped every fight. But I'll pass it to Yanal, man. What do you think this fight's gonna look like?
I hear you, the Red Fox in the building. But in all seriousness, I just think Yanal, he's a little bit. I feel like his power is being a little bit overrated after the last fight. Like he just caught Sam Patterson clean on the chin. I don't know. That was just a weird one, and I was able to play Yanal Ashmoz in that spot. It was kind of just more of a fade on Sam Patterson. I think I was like one of 2 people I saw that took Yanal Ashmoz, and that's just what led me to that side because it just seems like when everybody's on one side, you got to fade it. So Sam Patterson, I didn't think he was going to get knocked out brutally like that, but he just proved out to be an absolute fraud. And I think you kind of got to forget about that win when you judge Yanal Ashmoz. It did happen. He did get a big debut win, but you don't want to overreact to that or, you know, it did happen. But I think, you know, pre-UFC, he's fought limited competition. This guy only has like 7 fights total, and 3 of them were in 2017. He's pretty inactive and only having 4 fights in the last, you know, since 2021. I think Chris Duncan has more UFC experience. He's fought actual UFC level competition. The fight with Dennis Hughes was close. The fight with Ryan Rizko was close, and he just shows the grappling. He doesn't really have any jiu-jitsu. And I think that's where Chris Duncan's going to be able to get on top in this fight. He does show actually pretty good wrestling. Now, on the striking on the feet, both these guys are, you know, extremely slow. But I think Yanal is a little bit more behind the 8 ball. He just doesn't really seem to know what he's doing on the feet. I feel like he's just throwing to throw. Nothing's really set up. Not really combos. Whereas Chris Duncan, he does have a good low kick. And one thing I do want to mention, too, he did have like a torn ligament in his last fight versus Omar Morales. So I don't really take too much into account because he just looked slow as ever. Both these guys are not good fighters, but the line's going the other way. And I feel like the public play is Ashmoz. Everybody's going to Ashmoz. Ashmoz KO won. And I think we're just overreacting a little bit to that KO that he just got. So I'm sorry to break everybody's heart here. I'm sorry that my guy, I can't tell you that he's going to get another knockout. But if he does, I celebrate anyway, so it's like a hedge out. I actually think Duncan's the real sharp play here. We've seen sharp money come in on him at pick'em price. I actually messaged Liam a little bit earlier in the week saying I think Duncan at -110 is a good price, and he got bet up, so that's something to keep an eye on. I think even at -145, there's just still a little bit value left, and I see some of these lines creeping up even more, so it'd be insane if the price goes up even more. They're kind of giving you that bait on the public underdog. So either stay away or it's a favorite or pass for me. That's my opinion on this fight. I'm so sorry, guys.
Man, I never thought this day would come. So I guess you guys you heard it here first. So James Krause, FBI, if you're listening, we have Yanal Ashmoz on camera saying he's going to throw the fight. So,
bro, but like if you just think about it, like if I'm the one that's taking Chris Duncan, y'all got to take it now. So that's just if I'm saying it's a lock, I'm going with Duncan. I think he steams here.
The ultimate plot twist.
If Yanal somehow wins, you're never picking against him again. You're obligated to. Actually, no. Keep picking against him, so we keep betting on him.
Dude, I think Yano's an auto fade. I don't think he's UFC level, and I think he's about to get exposed. by the Scot.
Yeah, it's favored at press, man. I'm not gonna lie. As much as I want to bet Ashmoz for the culture, I don't think he's UFC level
For the
yet.
culture.
The thing is, number one, 74% of Tapology votes on Ashmoz as a dog. Ooh, don't like that. Number two, when I'm looking at this fight, he doesn't have the height advantage. He doesn't have the reach advantage. He's 2 years younger, but both these guys are 30 and below. So it's just like they're both like in close proximity, prospect age. I feel like Duncan right now is probably just a little bit more ready to go and a little bit more physical for the weight class. So those are the intangibles that I'm looking at here. But I just don't feel like I have a massive edge on this fight. I feel like I haven't had a great read on Chris Duncan, right? I took a bath on Charlie Campbell. So at a certain point, you just leave it to the market and learn your lesson. So I'm going to let this one go.
Man, if Yanal had any takedown defense, I wouldn't mind the play on it. But he gets taken down by a gust of wind. And Duncan actually has good wrestling, so I can't go against that.
Last question before we roll on out of here. Our guy Sigma Uchiba says, think Duncan can get a sub. How do you guys feel about that, gentlemen?
I'll go first. I mean, yeah, he could, but I mean, I haven't really seen him go for submissions. Like he'll grapple, but it's like a lot of it's just like wasting time in like guard or half.
Yeah, watch the fight before in UFL.
Yeah, I honestly I think the decision. I think plus 330 on DraftKings. I don't think that's a bad way to play Duncan, man. I don't see much finish and equity from him if he pursues the grappling.
There was only 2 decisions that I listed on this whole card. I list them all out by like category, the props I have. Duncan decision plus 350 on FanDuel. That was another one that I was looking at. So again, a little bit of alignment here. And it's not to say that, Yanal can't win by knockout. It just seems too public to me, whereas Duncan decision seems like something that's very plausible. He goes out there and fights conservatively against Omar Morales, a kickboxer. He went out there, pushed a wrestling-heavy game plan. He just showed that he knows that he needs to get wins in the UFC, period, point blank. ATT, they're probably just drilling that into his head like, dude, we don't care if you finish or not. Just win the fight, please, and don't get hurt anymore because he's a young guy who's taking a ton of damage in these fights. So I think that's something to watch for long term. But let's move to this next fight at women's bantamweight. Ketlen Vieira. Boy, oh boy, how the mighty have fallen down the card. What the hell? She's in the 4th fight of the night in London after main eventing a couple cards in the UFC. But in any case, she's taking on Pannie Kianzad here. And I expected to be more bullish on the Ketlen Vieira side here. You know, the thing about Ketlen is she just consistently fights very close with her competition. You know, even fights where I felt like I had a huge edge on the market, like the Holly Holm fight, I bet her a plus 200. Feel like if you had that to do over again, most people would be like, all right, yeah, I'd probably take that as opposed to the minus 250 on Holm. But in any case, it was a close fight. Holm, pushed her into the clinch a lot. It was a lot of back and forth knees and all this stuff. And I do feel like she laid out the blueprint that Mayra Buena Silva followed, by just beating her up, being intentional with your strikes in the clinch and looking for your opportunity to submit her. And then we saw, I bet Vieira by sub in that last fight, it was plus 850. Then Mayra Buena Silva, it's like plus 390. She's a little bit more violent and intentional with her ability to catch the sub. So I think Ketlen Vieira by sub is an interesting play here because I do think, number one, she has power on the feet, but number two, she doesn't like to hurt anybody. So if she does happen to hurt somebody, I feel like she will go for the sub, but she also has good grappling upside, I feel like, in this fight. However, on the feet, I don't trust her chin very much. I feel like she's a little bit of a liability, and she got outstruck by a decent number in terms of significant strikes in her last fight. Total strikes, I think she outlanded her by almost 40. But then in terms of significant strikes, she got outlanded by like 30. So like relevant distance strikes, she's just not doing enough. But I do think the takedowns will come easier here than they will against her last opponent, Raquel. So it's a close enough fight, but I do still lean towards Ketlen. I don't want to stop Brazilian hate. Like I want to be on the train. I want to stop Brazilian hate. I want to be, part of the team. But I just feel like as a favorite, I can't really trust Ketlen Vieira these days. How do you feel about this one? We'll start with you, Pierce.
Yeah, man. So I said earlier with the Brazil fight, trying to get away from betting women's favorites. I mean, I understand why people played Pannie. I think she opened like plus 185, but the fight's a pass, man. I honestly didn't get to the tape as much as I wanted to for this fight, but from what I remember, Pannie might have the volume on the feet. Ketlen's probably the stronger girl. Maybe she looks to clinch, get takedowns, but I mean, yeah, it's a pass for me. Maybe favorite or pass. Ketlen minus 150. I mean, it just makes sense, man. It's women's MMA.
Yeah, the thing about Ketlen is like on paper she should be the champion of the division. Like she's literally a black belt in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, trains at Novo União, black belt in judo, wrestling champion in Brazil. Like what box is she not checking for like things that you'd want? She has some power on the feet. She used to throw pretty intentional combinations, but I think whether it was the knockout from Aldana, whether it's just like her temperament in life, she goes out there and we saw that line, but at a certain point, I've donated 3 units or so on the ITD props and on the sub props. So it's like she's giving and she's taking away from me. So let's hear what you have to say about this one, Jewish Better. I think this is an interesting one.
Yeah, man, I just don't really. I think the over 2.5 is a good spot in this fight. Minus 300. Both these girls are genuinely going to decisions. I think Pannie's last like 7-8 fights have went to decision. Most of her career has been decision, unless she's getting choked out or finished on the ground. That hasn't happened in a while. She get finished by Macy Chiasson back in 2018, so that's never a great look. But Ketlen Vieira, she's got a good jab. She stays on the outside. Both these girls are kind of similar fighters and just decision machines. I could see this fight going to decision, it being a split decision, and being a really greasy one. I wanted to say before, Duncan made in the Duncan fight, my dude D1 Diakiese made a good point. Our dude Lou Betcha is out there. He's got to get the yam bags because he's gonna either kick him in the nuts or he's gonna grab the fence, bro. Calling it right now.
I love it. So shout out to our guy Lou Betcha, friend of the show. We got our first yam bag shout of the day. So excited to see if that one pulls through for you. What is that, plus 2,000 as a rule?
I guess so. Let's go.
Shout out to our guy Burgundy Bets as well. Says Bloody Marys and fist fights. Thanks, fellas. Best of luck this weekend. Thank you for the support, my brother. Appreciate you big time. And thank you to everybody keeping it active in the chat. We got 90 people rocking with us live, so appreciate each and every one of you guys. Dixon Sider, this is the last thing we'll ask about this fight. He says, Liam, I'm hearing Vieira, like Rory McDonald, my freaking one of my favorite fighters ever, shout out, has traded a thirst for violence for a life of peace and new religion. Does it concern you she doesn't have that fire inside her anymore? Yeah, that's what I'm saying, dude. Like, she is not a very violent person. She is like telling the people, like, as soon as the fight's over, she's like, I'm so sorry I had to hit you. Like, that is not what you want to see from a fighter, with all due respect. Like, I'm not saying you want them to be like after the fight punching somebody like Paul Daly, but I'm saying we at least want them to want to be aggressive during the fight. We want them to want to finish fights. And I feel like Ketlen Vieira, unless it's like a harmless guillotine or something, like she has to get somebody in a position where she can't hurt them at all and just like gently choke them to sleep, or she's not going to want to hurt them. So yeah, I can't really trust that right now.
Real quick point on this one. 86% of Tapology votes for Ketlen Vieira, 77% of bets and betting handle on her as well.
See,
so I don't know,
this
man.
is why, despite my gut saying like, yeah, if you put a gun to my head and like said, who do you think's a better fighter? I think Ketlen Vieira is a better fighter. But who do I think is going to win on Saturday? That's a whole different story. And here's the other thing. If we don't assume that Ketlen Vieira is going to finish, who do you think is going to have a more vocal contingency in England this weekend?
Yeah.
It's going to be Pannie Kianzad. She's coming from Europe. She's going to be coming with an entourage, I'm sure. So watch Pannie Kianzad get her free ticket to the top 5 of the division. Gross. What a gross sport. All right. In any case, let's move to the next one. Bryan Barberena, Makhmud Muradov. This is an interesting fight here because, my first look, I thought Bryan Barberena was a live underdog. And then I realized this fight is at 185 pounds. And I was like, what the hell is happening in the world? Bryan Barberena used to fight at 155. I noted in my research, the last time he submitted somebody was Sage Northcutt. Sage Northcutt in the UFC. That's a throwback, right? So this guy, is mostly a stand and bang type of fighter. Easy to take down. The stats back that up, especially in his recent fights. Like, his takedown defense has actually gotten worse over time. The guy gets taken down with shocking frequency these days, even in fights where he wins. So I just haven't liked this idea of moving up to 185 for Barberena, the more I thought about it. I've been the biggest Muradov hater maybe out there, but then you look at this fight and you're like, man, is the UFC just setting this guy up for success? Because he's a much bigger guy. He's fighting a guy who's a little bit older, got a ton of miles on the tank. And, normally Barberena needs to cook you over time, right? He needs to hit you a million times, hit you 130 times to finish you. And Muradov kind of takes people to the third round and does the same thing with them. So, barring that Meerschaert result, where Meerschaert is just a better striker than people think he is, everybody that he fights, unless they knock him out early, gets into a more competitive striking match than they expect. So I just feel like when I look at this kind of fight, I say to myself, Makhmud Muradov is being set up for success, unfortunately. And I think he's going to win this fight and probably finish it. So, yeah, that's what I'm looking at here. I think Makhmud Muradov probably finishes Barberena. Let's go to my guy, Jewish Better first, brother. How do you feel about this fight? And are you planning on taking action?
Yeah, man, when you talk about size, where it really comes into effect is with that grappling, right? And he's going to be able to get Barberena to the ground. The only thing I will say on this fight is look out for like a live bet on Barberena, because we've seen Muradov gas before. We've seen him lose fights where he shouldn't have. And I'm just not 100% sold on him at this price tag. Like, if you really have to like give me, obviously Muradov's the one who's supposed to win this side. He's the A side here. He's a minus 300 something favorite, I think, and he's going to be parlayed this week. This is a complete pass for me, man. I wouldn't be parlaying a minus 300 on a guy with unproven cardio. This is a complete pass for me. I think he should wash Barberena on the ground. He's a more technical striker, in my opinion. Barberena kind of just stands and bangs. His last win was versus Robbie Lawler, I believe, and he's 40-something years old. I know he got a knockout on his last fight, but still, he's getting submitted on the ground easily. That RDA fight, man, he just went to that arm triangle. There was no resistance. Gets the job done easily. I know RDA is black belt, really good, but Muradov has decent wrestling. He should be able to get this fight to the ground. The one time I did see him wrestle, I believe it was against, let me go ahead and look back. I believe it was against Barallo in his last fight, and he was getting guillotine attempts in that fight. He was able to get swept, but I just don't see that happening here. If he wants to wind up on top here, I think he's so big and so physical, and Barberena 54% takedown defense, clear path in this fight. So good favorite, but I would probably just pass on this fight completely or look to live bet Barberena if I see Muradov looking like he smoked a pack of Newports.
The thing is, I was ready to like just be all in on the Muradov fade train. And then I looked at the fact that, the Barrio fight, he did way better than I thought, right? I thought Barrio was easily going to submit it because I was like, he's going to take the back. And he took the back and he had good positions and he couldn't really finish it. So Muradov is just a little bit better than I gave him credit for before. And he also worked intentionally on his wrestling. He went to that camp with Marcin Tybura in Poland. So that's where he's been getting in training. And honestly, I feel like it's been showing in his game because he's been looking like a guy who has better defensive grappling fundamentals than he did before. And his cardio also looked better against Barrio because if it was a little worse, he would have got finished there. So I feel like it's not like he's a world beater now or anything like that. But I feel like if you put him in an advantageous situation and, he's already got these inherent skills. It wasn't like he was bad before. It was just that it could all fall off the rails at any point. I feel like this is a fight where he has so many inherent advantages that he could kind of pick it up if it starts to go sideways and go, all right, I'm just going to take him down. Because anybody could take down Bryan Barberena almost any time. So that's the one thing that I really don't like about Barb's game. What do you think about this one, Pierce?
Yeah, so I got a hot take for the week. I'm going with Makhmud Muradov. But I mean, it's pretty straightforward. I mean, I thought Bryan Barberena was kind of fat at 170 to begin with. So him going to 185, I don't know, maybe he wants to eat a little more junk food every day, but I don't understand the career move. It's weird, though, because it's like there's only it's a less than a year age difference between the two. And it's like, but when you watch Barberena, you're like, you would think he's in his late 30s, early 40s. It's like you can tell the wear and tear is getting to him. And I mean, I agree with JB when he said, oh, yeah, the cardio could be a concern. But I did parlay Muradov with Tom Aspinall in the main event, like everybody and their mothers did this week. But, I mean, I just feel like it's such a setup fight. Muradov, I did play his submission line at, I think it was 14-1 on Monday. So I don't think that's a bad line, but he's probably going to knock him out. Bryan Barberena.
It's a great line.
Yeah, I mean, I'm hoping for like a club and sub, but or even if like Muradov gets tired, or he's like, because Barberena has good pressure, I'll give him that. So maybe Barberena is pressuring him, and Muradov level changes, gets the
Dude, I
back
love
leg.
that bet.
Yeah, I mean, I see a plus 900 on DraftKings, so I mean, Bet Online's like plus 550, but plus 900, it's worth a little bit of a sprinkle because Barberena's been subbed his last two fights, albeit against probably two of the better grapplers in the welterweight division, but. Yeah, Muradov ITD, sub. Maybe live bet Barberena if the Muradov play looks a little sketchy after a round and a half.
See, I wasn't going to say anything about this one unless one of the homies brought it up, but one of the homies brought it up. So now the 96 people rocking with us live are going to get it as well. I bet Muradov sub, and I bet Muradov and Barberena ends by sub at plus 900 here. That's a stupid price. The ends by sub at plus 900, I can guarantee you is a busted price. I don't think it will last. It was plus 600 on other sharper books, plus 900 on FanDuel. So, when you look at the fight itself, both of these guys have been submitted a number of times. Neither one of them has a good ground game. Neither one of them has reliable cardio. Both of them are capable of being club and sub. Their chins aren't that reliable either. But what? What? A fight that's being almost, assumed is going to end ITD for Muradov, but him to win by sub is plus 1100. That's not math. That you don't mathematics that. So I think that people got to just translate these numbers into percentages and then go back and work out the math. Because if somebody's supposed to win inside the distance essentially 50% of the time, then they're not supposed to win by sub 8% of the time when they have wins by sub prior to the UFC, when they have submission attempts in the UFC, and when their opponent has lost by submission many times in the UFC. So including his last two fights in a row. Let's talk one last time about the stats here because I went pretty deep into the numbers here. So let me pull this up for 1 second because I really put some work into the research here. So in his last 7 UFC fights, he's allowing an average, I'm talking about Barberena, of 3.9 takedowns per fight. So that is basically more than one takedown per round of fighting. Gunnar Nelson, 1 takedown, sub in round 1. RDA, 4 takedowns, 2 sub attempts, sub in round 2. 0 takedowns for either fighter in the Lawler fight, which is why he won that one, if anybody was confused. Matt Brown, 5 takedowns at 40 years of age. I was there live. Matt Brown won that fight. I'll go to my grave believing that. I was there in Columbus, Ohio with the Columbus faithful, and we were cheering for Matt Brown, and goddamn, that was some BS. I'm kidding, of course, because I didn't even rewatch on TV. But Matt Brown, with all the takedowns that he wanted at 41 years of age. I mean, come on. Darian Weeks, 4 takedowns in a UFC debut. The guy never won a fight in the UFC. Jason Witt, 8 takedowns, a knockdown, and a sub attempt. The man is 2-4 in the UFC and has the worst chin I've ever seen in the history of mixed martial arts. Anthony Ivy, 5 takedowns. The guy can't stop a takedown. So you're now sending him up one more weight class against the guy who tried to take down Caio Barajo. This guy wants to prove he can take somebody down right now. He's going to take down Bryan Barberena, in my humble opinion. So I like Muradov here, ITD, sub. And I think the fight is going to end by sub. Also, I do think if Barb wins this fight, there's a not insignificant chance that he could submit Muradov because Muradov will be trying to wrestle here, maybe even into a hole. So, yeah, in all ways, I agree with you, my brother. Now, let's kick it to the next fight here on the card. We got Mick Parkin taking on Jamal Pogues, and I have no strong opinion on this fight. I don't care to bet this fight. It's low-level heavyweight MMA. I considered briefly the Mick Parkin side, but then I looked at the experience of Pogues, and the losses from Pogues are really justifiable, in my opinion. When you look back, Jordan Young, that's a good fighter. Rest in peace. The guys that he's lost to, none of them I look at and say, Alex Polizzi, I think, is another one. Like, they're all good fighters, but he's kind of an unnatural heavyweight. Having a close fight with Parisian certainly doesn't inspire confidence to go lay chalk for me personally, but this other guy hasn't been fighting anybody of substance, whereas his losses are all to substantive fighters. So Pogues has to be a favorite, I feel like, on the strength of his schedule, but I really just don't feel bullish about betting on this fight. So I guess we'll kick it over to our guy, Jewish Better, because if I remember correctly, you have a strong opinion on this fight.
I love Pogues here, man. I love Pogues here. I think he's absolutely the better fighter. I mean, look at this fight like we were talking about before when you were saying about percentages. I believe this fight is favored to go over 1.5 rounds at minus 210, if I'm not mistaken, right? No, now it's sitting at over 2.5 at -105. So bookmakers have now adjusted, and they believe this fight may even go over 2.5 rounds at a pick'em price. Now, if we look at Mick Parkin's record, he hasn't really fought anybody, and I know this is heavyweight, but he's 6-0 with only 6 fights. He has a decent amount of amateur experience, so that's always good. But he hasn't really fought anybody, and most of his fights end before that 1.5 mark. So Book's being a little bit bullish, saying this fight goes over 2.5, and I think that has to do with the Pogue side. He fights really smart, and he's not necessarily one of those guys who's gonna want to chase the finish. And I think the farther this fight goes, this guy's never seen a third round. We don't know what his cardio is going to look like the later the fight goes, especially when he meets some resistance. I mean, this guy's wins come against Faith Atkins, a 6-9 guy that he went to round 2 with. In all reality, if Pogues fight this guy, he might. Pogues isn't even a finisher. He's probably going to finish him in round 1. I love Pogues' jab here in this spot, and his range management is really underrated for a heavyweight, and he's light and he moves on his feet. Now, he might not be at a size advantage here, so Mick Parkin might try to implement the grappling, but I think Pogues has pretty good wrestling himself, and he has offensive takedowns in his arsenal too, so if the grappling's a wash, I think he's the much better, cleaner technical striker, and I don't think, the thing is, I don't think this guy, Mick Parkin's, ever seen a style like this. He's training with a good training partner in Tom Aspinall, another guy who's light, moves in on the feet, but I think he's probably just a punching bag for him at the end of the day. Eduardo Neves had some success in that fight until he absolutely death-gassed like 3 minutes into round 1, gives up the back and just quits. He doesn't tap. He doesn't get submitted. He just quits. He didn't want to fight anymore. So Mick Parkin gets the dub here, and now he's in the UFC. And he is the English fighter here. I know I'm betting against the English fighter. Heavyweight, it is volatile, but I think Pogues has the advantages here everywhere. And the market isn't quite high on him. The public isn't quite high on him because he had some weird performances in the UFC, right? He didn't really chase the finish against, what was the guy's name in his last fight? I don't have the record up here. A Parisian. I was thinking of Collier, like Porter or somebody. One of those.
They're
fucking
all the same
Chase
guy,
Sherman,
essentially.
one of those fucking bums, right? But he had his way
They're
in
all
that
the
fight.
military man on the thumbnail, as a matter of fact.
Right. I think he's going to stay at range, chop low kicks. Mick Parkin is slow. He's fighting janitors. Let's go. I'm going with Jamal Pogues here. He's 27 years old, and I think he's on the up and up with the UFC experience. So let's go, guys. Big bet on Pogues all day.
Best of luck, brother. I kind of am thinking about an ends by sub as like a contrarian narrative here, because our guy Dixon Sider just pointed out he likes McParkin sub. That is how he finished Neves in that fight. But also, I bet Jamal Pogues by sub against Parisian, and then he just went out there and jabbed from distance. And like you said, didn't really push the finish. But I did think that he had some submission upside in the past. And like you pointed out, the reason there can be upside at heavyweight is that they gas out. So like one guy could just be completely dead and just like quitting on the ground. So that is one thing that I would look at here, because it's probably going to be a very high plus number on either one of them to win by sub would be my guess. So it's what I'm going to take a look at here.
Pogues hates finishing. He will just lay on top of this guy if he gets. He
resents the implication. He's like, "Don't you dare bet me by decision, or you're just going to be offended." Pierce, what do you got on this one, brother?
Yeah, man. So I kind of agree with JB, but earlier in the week, I saw the openers on Bet Online for the props. I did quarter unit sprinkle on Parkin sub and Parkin decision. And my thought process was, Parkin on the regional scene, he kind of goes for that single leg, finds the takedown. Doesn't really show much sub equity prior to the Contender Series, but it was like plus 700, and I was like, fuck it, whatever. I'll just sprinkle this and tape later. But after the tape, Jamal Pogues is the side. Let's just say one dude is white, and you get where I'm going with this one. But no, in reality though, Parkin, he's a decent fighter, man. I mean, he knows what he's doing. Like you can tell, like he has like the skill set, or at least the idea of what he wants to do in the octagon. But he's fat, he's slow. I will say he has looked like he's cut a little weight, so maybe him and Paul Craig have been on the same diet. I don't know if they train full time together, but I know Paul Craig was in his corner for the Contender Series in a fight against Eduardo Neves, who I personally thought was horrible. Shout out Mick Parkin plus 200 against Eduardo Neves. That was a good bet. But, I mean, in this matchup, I think Pogues is just going to be the more athletic fighter. 1-2 from range. He can mix in the takedowns, but I guess Parkin's ground game is a bit on the bottom, is a bit of an unknown. I mean, we did see him get mounted a couple times from a guillotine. I don't know the dude's name, but Parkin, like, he shrimped out. He got up well, but against Jamal Pogues, who's a good wrestler, I mean, I don't think he's a good finisher, which is going to lead me into my big bet for, not big bet, but 1 unit on the fight goes to decision at plus 160. I got that earlier in the week. I don't mind that. Jamal Pogues can't finish a sandwich, even though he's 250 pounds. But, yeah, Jamal Pogues by decision. I'm hoping for some cage pushing because, heavyweight overs and goes the distance are always sweaty. But, yeah, Jamal Pogues.
Yeah, I was hoping there would be a decent number on the ends by sub. It's like plus 380. I would never bet that. In a heavyweight fight, that's the most disgusting proposition I've ever heard. Pogue sub is only plus 1100 as well. So, yeah, there's no meat on the bone for the things that I was going to look at here. But yeah, true showtime, says Sigma Uchiba. Now we're going to dig into the meat of it. We're getting to the real fun fights here. So without further ado, let's break down a lightweight fight between Marc Diakiese and Joel Alvarez. What's up, brother? You got something?
No, that's the D and the 1. D1.
Oh, D1 Diakiese. Yes, sir. In the building himself. So we've got a lot of representation on this show. Without further ado, why don't we kick it over to our guy, Jewish Better? Like I said, saving the best for last year with our guy, D1 Diakiese. So how do you feel about this one, brother? Are you taking any action? I have been reticent to bet on this fight because it feels like the Twitter argument of the week, which I try and leave that one to the Twitter folks and move on myself. But curious to hear how you came down on this one, brother.
Man, I feel like the Twitter argument is Duncan versus Ashmoz, if anything, man. Because when I look at the public on this fight, man, it's crazy. I look at BetMMA.tips. I believe it's now sitting at about 89-7 when we're looking at picks in this fight, and I just don't think the public should. All right, we got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 13 people, one including myself, on Diakiese. And then we look at props too. It's a lot on Alvarez as well. I'm seeing a lot of Alvarez love this weekend, just for a guy who's best win is against Thiago Moises, who could be a little bit fluky sometimes. I mean, it's a great win at the end of the day, but his other wins are against Joe Duffy, who, good UFC, decent veteran, but not as, toward the later end of his career, not as good as we once thought. And then I forget, Yaslov, whatever his name is. That guy wasn't good. Gets the guillotine in both those fights, but really, pre-UFC, I think his favorite submission, if I'm not mistaken, was the triangle choke. Let's bring him up here on Tapology. Joel Alvarez here.
Yeah, he's got a lot of triangle choke finishes.
A lot of triangles and a lot of guillotines. So that's his 2 favorite moves. So this guy is definitely going to be very comfortable and very reliant on his jiu-jitsu. And I just don't like that in MMA. A guy who's going to be super comfortable on his back. I think, this is the Brit I'm going to be going with, the Brit nobody's talking about. We always talk about this hometown advantage, and everybody's just willing to bet Joel Alvarez here, assuming he wins by sub. Now, I know that's just too obvious of a play, and I think when that's too obvious of a play, you kind of got to go against that narrative. Now, he has been submitted twice before, once by Dan Hooker. When Dan Hooker hurt him, he shot in, and that ended badly for him. And versus Jafel Alvarez, who's just an absolute animal. That guy gets a hold of your neck, the fight's gonna be over. I think Alvarez spends too much time on his back in this fight. Diakiese is gonna be able to get top time, and I don't think he's gonna be knocked out in the spot. I don't think he's ever been knocked out. So maybe he gets hurt on the feet by Alvarez, and he shoots in and gets into a guillotine. Well then screw me. I bet the wrong side, but I just think Alvarez is the square bet of the week. I'm calling it right now. 80-something% of bets and handle on Tapology, and like some crazy amount, like I said, on Bet MMA tips. I'm seeing them all over Twitter, and Tapology, a ridiculous amount as well. I'm going with Diakiese here, the Brit nobody's talking about. He's coming off a loss against Michael Johnson, so that was a bad look for a lot of people. I think it's just a little bit of an overrate on Diakiese, on Alvarez here. And the bane of him is going to be that he's going to be too reliant on his jiu-jitsu, make bad IQ choices, whereas Diakiese is just going to try to win the fight any way he can. He gets to the judges, could even give him a robbery at this point. So I'll be going with Diakiese here as my pick and as a bet. I think just too much love on the Alvarez side. And when I see that, it's just like my boy Yanal Ashmoz. Drew got to go against it. So Alvarez square bet of the week. I'm sorry, everybody betting him out there. You're gonna get mad at me. You're gonna call me stupid. D1 Diakiese's in the building. Let's go.
When they zig, you zag, brother. I see what you're doing. Fading the public, old school strategy. Oldie but a goodie. It does tend to work. Not on every fight, obviously, but long term, fading the public.
I mean, everybody thinks he's going to get the sub, bro. Everybody thinks he's going to get the sub, and I just think that's way too obvious of a path on a guy who's only been finished twice by submission. I think this fight goes the distance, man. I honestly do.
We'll talk about a couple props that I have circled. I have 2 props on opposite sides circled on this fight as well. So to your point, we'll discuss that. But let's kick it over to the man himself. D1 Diakiese is in the room. He's got the backdrop. He's ready to fire off at the hip. So what do you got for us, brother?
Yeah, as you can tell by the backdrop, going with Joel Alvarez by decision, ladies and gentlemen. That's the play of the week. No, but in all seriousness, though, when I look at Joel Alvarez, my man JB, 85% of the handle, like 75% of the bets on DK is on Joel Alvarez. And when I look at that, and I look at a market perspective, Joel Alvarez is minus 200, okay? Fun fact, Joel Alvarez, this is the biggest favorite that he's been in his UFC career. And this is Marc Diakiese. This isn't Yakovlev. This isn't Joe Duffy. This is D1 Marc Diakiese. When it comes to Joel Alvarez, I think he's got 0% takedown defense, okay? So the dude's takedown defense is essentially, let me jump for guillotine, and I preach day in and day out in my head, and to anybody that wants to listen to me, don't bet on guys that jump guillotine. Guillotines do not work in MMA, but I guess for Joel Alvarez, it has. I mean, how many guillotine finishes does he have in the UFC? Is it just 2? Or did he get Belluardo as well?
He definitely – no, Belluardo was a ground and pound finish. Mm-hmm. Yep.
Yeah, so it's 2 guillotine finishes. And in this matchup, I honestly feel like Joel Alvarez is guillotine or bust. When you look at Marc Diakiese, I mean, his striking, like, I've seen some takes, people saying Joel Alvarez is the better striker. I mean, maybe he'll be the guy walking forward, but do we forget that, like, coming into the UFC, Marc Diakiese, that was his background. He was known for being the bone crusher, the guy that would knock people the fuck out. But now he's kind of added a wrinkle to his game, and it's the grappling. So, honestly, with Diakiese, I like his cardio, I like his pace, and I like his takedowns, man. He can shoot a lot of takedowns. I mean, in the Michael Johnson fight, I know some people, recency bias, they're looking into that fight. They're like, oh, damn, I bet Marc Diakiese at minus 300, minus 400, and he burned me. So now we got Joel Alvarez. I'm going to bet Joel Alvarez by submission. I don't think that's a good bet, man. I mean, yeah, maybe he gets the guillotine, but if at the end of the day, if you're giving me someone that's getting taken down by Danilo Belluardo and he against Arman Sarukian, I mean, I know Arman's high level, but Arman really embarrassed him on the mat. Like, it's pretty obvious once the guillotine doesn't work, it's like, what's there for Joel Alvarez? I mean, maybe he knocks out Diakiese because Diakiese's getting older. How old is Diakiese, Liam, if you don't mind checking for me?
They're both 30 years of age.
The same age, yeah.
Okay, so it's like they're the same age. I thought Marc Diakiese was a lot older, but 30 years old. He's in the prime of his career, man. He's fighting in England. I don't know if he fought in England for the Hadzovic fight, or was that the Borshev fight? Is this his first time?
The Borshev fight was definitely in Columbus, Ohio, because I watched him absolutely wrestle Borshev.
Dude, please tell me you had a bet on that fight, man. He was the underdog.
Please tell me that I had Slava Borshev and I was just – dude, that was a reverse sweep. First ever UFC that I went to, reverse swept, bro. Had a great time, though. Had a great time. Not
always the live events.
Of course. Dude, it's kind of like the distraction of the fights, like, gets you off your game. So you're, like, too excited. You want knockouts. You want all this craziness. And you're not thinking logically, which is like, no, it's probably going to go to decision. Like, I honestly lived and learned about D1 Diakiese that night.
We're all degenerates at heart, so whenever we go to an event, we got to have a bet on every fight, even if that's betting Trevor Peak. But, yeah, Marc Diakiese, I know which prop you're going to talk about, Liam. It's got to be Marc Diakiese by decision, plus 325. That is the prop of the night, or the afternoon, depending on what time it is.
2 decisions on this whole card. I only wrote down 2 decisions. Duncan decision plus 350 on FanDuel. Marc Diakiese decision plus 380 Bet Rivers. Those were the two decision prices that stood out to me this week. You know, I'm normally not a guy that bets decision props. Some people have different edges, right? I do very well on submission props. Other people do well with other props. So for me, I kind of stick to where my edge is most of the time. But when I'm investigating these props, I'm definitely going to be investigating that decision prop. In terms of the Alvarez play, I think you're right. You know, I think the square look here might be the sub. I think if you know Diakiese is going to come in here very reticent to get into these grappling exchanges. Joel Alvarez, very credentialed, scary black belt on the mat. But Joel Alvarez walked down Thiago Moises like a gangster and beat the absolute shit out of him and also left him a bloody mess. Like, that was the one thing that said to me, if you were to play Alvarez here, the KO at plus 550 is what's standing out to me because the guy hits very hard. He's very long. He's a big, tall guy. And while Diakiese has not been finished by KO or TKO, he's absolutely been hurt before. And he's dove into a bunch of situations because he was hurt on the feet and then got finished. In this fight, he's probably going to be smart enough to say, I should not dive in on a takedown here unless I'm clear-headed. And so if he can't get in on his takedowns, if he can't get his momentum going early, that's the one thing I could see is like Alvarez will walk somebody down fearlessly in round one. And, you know, maybe that will change after that beatdown from Tsarukyan. But honestly, I thought the Tsarukyan fight was like the most foreseeable loss for him ever. Like I bet Tsarukyan for 5 units. I bet the ITD for over a unit. And that's not like a brag. It's just like the stylistic matchup is like this guy goes to his back every fight. And this guy is a murderer on top. Like that's a bad stylistic matchup. He's also just like short, stout, got really good hips. Terrible matchup. Diakiese is kind of long and awkward and has that neck. So those are the only things that give me pause, but he has been showing off better wrestling in these recent fights. And honestly, we just don't know what to expect from Alvarez here, coming off of a really bad beatdown, got a little bit of a, you know, facial laceration through the nose and like really bad damage in that fight as well. So, you know, we've seen Diakiese take some damage in his fights, but never like that, I didn't think. So, you know, it's going to be interesting to see how he responds. But two guys around a similar age, you're getting a big plus money price on one of them. I understand why you guys are taking that underdog shot. Best of luck to you.
I will add, so I haven't actually made a position on Diakiese yet because I'm waiting for, so DraftKings, they do the same game parlays, and I feel like this is going to be the obvious one. It's going to be very lucrative and might pay a lot of money, but they'll do the same game parlays. What I'm thinking of hitting, Marc Diakiese, and they let you do round 1 takedowns. I'm thinking we go 1+ round 1 takedown. Total takedowns, we'll go 2+ because I don't think Diakiese's subbing Alvarez. And if you want to get greedy, maybe play Marc Diakiese same game, 1 takedown round 1, 2 takedowns total, and method of victory to be a decision. I have a feeling that's going to be like plus 500, man, plus 400. It's probably going to be plus 500, and I can't help but not want to throw a couple $100 on that because that's his path to victory, man. Joel Alvarez flopping to his back, Diakiese grinding out a boring decision. Let's do it.
Yeah, and that's the other thing about Alvarez is I think he's a very tough guy. I don't think he's going to just give up in this fight. I don't think Diakiese's finishing him at a very high clip. So I do think the best, like maybe the optimal way to play Diakiese is that decision prop as well. So any way that you guys look to get savvy, I actually don't have access to DK as I've explained to the audience a little bit before, but if you have access to those SGPs, you could be savvy and find advantages, especially in MMA, relative to other sports where I think the SGPs are a little bit more negative EV. I think in MMA, you could definitely use your knowledge to your advantage. So shout out to you guys for that. Next up, Danny Roberts taking on Jonny Parsons. And Jonny Parsons always going to have a spot in my heart. You know that because he cashed me that plus 300 against Solomon Renfro. Listen, I bet the 1.5 units at plus 260, and it's something I've always stuck with, which is if you have an optimal, like if you think it's an entry point, then take it at the number. And then if it gets better, you can always add. And it got to plus 300, I added a little bit. And it got to plus 350, I added a little bit more. And at the end of the day, he probably didn't deserve the fight. But it also shouldn't have been a minus 350 or a minus 400 or whatever it was on the other side. Didn't have the cardio and consistency to push it for the 15 minutes. Parsons, despite getting rocked in that fight, ended up coming back, making it an honest scrap the whole way. And he stayed really tough. When he was nearly finished in that fight, when he had opportunities to quit, he ended up coming back. And honestly, Renfro did a lot of damage. He opened up the clip on him. He thought he had the finish, so he emptied his gas a little bit. And the thing about Jonny Parsons is he's not a quitter. So unless you put him down, unless you finish him, I think he's going to stay in the fight and be a dog about it. The one thing is, concussion issues, massive red flag. This guy said that the reason that he pulled out of the Michael Gilmore fight said he was having concussion issues in camp, that he was having headaches, that he couldn't really focus on training. And so he said he took 6 months off from training entirely. But he did say, I'm saying all this because now I feel better, because now I feel ready to come back, because now my health is in order. And he said, I was comfortable if I could never come back and do this. Like, I thought about that. He's like, but now I feel good. I'm training with the Angie Kawanis. I'm training with these guys. He's all over Vegas getting good work in. So I feel like he's still a talented guy. I still think that he's a really dangerous fight for somebody like Danny Roberts, who just doesn't have a very good chin. And the truth is, like, my gut instinct on this fight was Johnny Parsons is going to win the fight by knockout. When I heard about the concussion issues, that made me think, like, maybe I should just leave this fight alone. But the truth is, like, I do not trust Danny Roberts. I think he's a good fighter. I think he's got real skills. But then you look at the wins throughout all his UFC tenure. He's getting split decisions at his very best. Like, he's just not a very proven guy, I feel like, at the upper echelon. And when I look at this kind of fight, I say to myself, Johnny Parsons, not a very proven guy either. So pick'em price seems somewhat appropriate to me. But I just feel like Parsons is a little bit tougher, a little bit more dangerous. The home crowd, if this goes to decision, I think it's a lock for fucking Roberts. I think they'll just rob him blind. Who gives a shit about Johnny Parsons will be the idea from the English judges, I feel like. But when I do think about who's more likely to finish here, I think it's Parsons. And, you know, Parsons talks about having a decent ground game, you know, working on his skills on the mat as well. And I don't like what I've seen from Danny Roberts when he gets into grappling exchanges, really. So, honestly, I feel like Parsons is probably going to win this fight, but not a super bullish take from me. Let's hear what you've got to say, Pierce. You got any thoughts on this one, brother?
Yeah, man. Love hot chocolate, man. He's an OG for cashing that ticket against Ramazan Ameev. Shouldn't have cashed it, just like you shouldn't have cashed that Solomon Renfro versus Johnny Parsons fight, man. I love Solomon Renfro, man. It sucks to not see him in the UFC. I thought he won that fight, but regardless of that, I mean, we look at this matchup. I've bet Danny Roberts in a lot of fights. He has a lot of talent, but I guess I just need to accept the fact he's 36. He's getting pretty up there in his career. But when I first saw the matchup, you said you thought Parsons was going to knock him out. My first thought was, damn, Henry Hooft must really like Danny Roberts because he's trying his whole hardest to give Danny an easy matchup. But running the tape, it's like my head is telling me Johnny Parsons, but my heart wants to bet Danny Roberts, man. I mean, hot chocolate might be faster. I'll give him that. He is 36, but he probably does have the speed over Johnny Parsons, who's like, he's more of a Muay Thai guy. I know you mentioned the grappling could come into play. I don't think he's going to go for takedowns. I think if Parsons wins, it's probably finding the chin of Danny Roberts. But, I mean, Parsons is tough. He's a tough son of a bitch. I mean, he showed in the Renfro fight. He was thinking about folding to those power shots, but Johnny Parsons, he's tough as shit, and he's got that dog in him. But in this fight, it's a pass. Honestly, I was thinking about maybe playing an under, but at the same time, it's like Parsons is tough, man. I don't know if Danny Roberts is getting him out of there, but maybe I'll sprinkle Danny Roberts if D1 Diakiese gets it done and we got some change to play with. But, yeah, I'm going to go with Danny Roberts just because he's the boy. But, yeah, betting line's more than accurate, I would assume.
I think Parsons said in his interview that he expects Roberts to try and wrestle and grapple with him, which I expect as well. Just because I think Danny Roberts, like, as good as he is at striking, and he's very good, has always reacted so poorly to getting hit that I feel like at this stage in his career, if he gets hit by somebody like Parsons, he's going to instantly start trying to wrestle and grapple with him. And that's where I feel like Parsons could have some success, is only reactive grappling. I agree with you. I don't think he's going to come out here and shoot takedowns. He likes to walk forward, kick people, punch people, and knee people. That's what he likes to do. But I do think that he has some grappling in his back pocket here, and I think he's been working on it in preparation for this matchup. He's had a lot of time off as well, so a couple ways that he can improve. He's not that old a guy. That's why the concussion issues were a little bit unfortunate for him. I'm hopeful that he could come back here and look all right. But again, when you're talking about recent concussion issues at short plus money, that's not really going to get me out of bed most of the time. What do you think about this one, Jewish Better?
Yeah, I don't really want to take. I don't know if I want to take the concussion thing too seriously, like overreact to it or underreact to it, because it's just one of those things. I just feel like I don't have enough data here on Johnny Parsons. I'm going to be 100% honest with you on this, guys. It's a volatile striking matchup, in my opinion. At the end of the day, this guy's coming off a 2-year layoff. uh, concussion issues, Chinny on the Roberts side, like you said. I want absolutely no part of this fight. I don't even want to waste your guys' time on it. I don't have a read on it. I don't have an edge on it. So there's plenty of fights, plenty of spots on this card, and we got two other sharp guys on this panel. So let's go on to the next one, my man, if you don't mind.
Absolutely, brother. I'm totally with it. So with that, we've got our last prelim to discuss here, which is going to be Davey Grant taking on Daniel Marcos in the 135-pound division. Dangerous Davey Grant, one of my personal favorite guys to watch fight, always brings it, absolute banger. But I don't think that this is an easy matchup by any means. You know, I can understand why you're seeing a little bit of plus money here on Davey Grant. Yes, he's going out there getting good wins. However, when he's fighting these younger guys, when he's fighting the up-and-comers in the division, he's having a harder time. It's going to split decisions that aren't going his way. He's going to unanimous decision losses. He's getting dropped in fights against Martin Day, for Christ's sakes. I mean, the guy has always been fighting right on a fine line. And so when you look at the fight last time, he had to go get that really awesome comeback win against the Sunset. And the Sunset's a great fighter, but he's 40. You know, he's a guy who's very old for the division, who's past his best. And so Davey Grant continues to chip away, continues to check off life goals and life accomplishments and all these great things. But if you were to say which one of these guys has a chance of contending for a UFC title at some point in the future, it would be Daniel Marcos. And it's not to say that he will do that. I'm not predicting that. But what I'm saying is he's 30 years of age. He's putting in all the right work. He's still undefeated, and he's been taking gradual steps up in competition throughout his run. He's been improving who he's training with. He's been improving his physical regimen, and the guy looks better every time out. So if I was to expect that Davey Grant comes out here looking like a different fighter, I mean, he's going to come out here throwing wide arching, long, straight arm punches that can kill people and also leave him susceptible to getting countered. So I love Davey Grant, and I think he's a fun banger. But I'm not going to be getting to the Davey Grant side this week. You know, I think he could look very live in this fight, but ultimately I think his chin is a liability. I think he could get hurt. I think his grappling has looked good on offense, especially in recent fights, but I do question what it will look like if he's put on defense again, because he's found a way out in a couple of UFC fights in the past. So very tough guy, great fighter. But I kind of like Daniel Marcos overall as a prospect. And so I'm not going to bet against him here. I'm not going to bet on him either. I'm not going to lay the chalk. He's flying across, halfway across the world to get this one in, but feel like he's a good prospect. And honestly, I think he's going to get this win. So Pierce, how do you feel about this one, brother? Am I overrating our guy Marcos here?
Yeah, man. So this is honestly, it's a weird fight because I see conflicting opinions online. It's like some people want to take the dog shot on Davey Grant because there's one dog you want to bet on this card. It's Davey fucking Grant. The dude comes to fight. He's going to fight for your dollar. I mean, we saw in the Sunset fight, down 2-0 on the judges' scorecards, pulls off the inverted triangle out of his ass, man. If anybody had Davey Grant submission tickets, man, you're going to start telling me your bets, and I'm just going to tell you. But in this matchup, it's like Daniel Marcos, I think this fight's going to answer a lot of questions about him because it's like, yeah, he looks the part. I mean, striking because his grappling's it's fine, but it's like he's more of like a kickboxer. But at the end of the day, he's fighting the guillotine merchant in Simon Oliveira and Brandon Lewis, who I bet in that fight as a favorite. Which is kind of dumb on my part because Marcos was coming off a long layoff. We didn't know what he was going to look like, but that bet looked horrible. Marcos, he looks solid on the Contender Series, man. I like his kicks. I think that's going to be the story of the fight is whether Marcos can keep at range and, chop up the leg for Davey Grant. I mean, we've seen Davey Grant in a couple fights, even the Jonathan Martinez one, a little bit in the Smolka fight as well. He doesn't like leg kicks, man. And I feel like if Marcos can stay at range, hit some outside calf kicks, and maybe that he does have a nice front kick up the middle. We saw him hit Lewis with that a couple times. But Lewis is tough as fuck.
You beat me to it, dog. That was my read right there.
Nah, but yeah, you see the same things that I'm seeing, man. It's the straight shots and the stuff up the middle for my man Daniel Marcos. But Davey Grant, man, he's gonna fight for your dollar. And at the end of the day, it's like Marcos, he looks the part in this matchup, but it's like we don't know. And at the price, it's minus 150. I was hoping we get dog odds on him when I first saw the fight, but it seems like everyone knows that Davey Grant's getting up there in age, and maybe that chin's gonna get checked. We'll go front kick up the middle for our boy Daniel Marcos.
I am unfortunately seeing this one eye to eye with you, brother. I just think that he's a really dangerous guy right now. No pun intended there. And, Davey's a good fighter, very solid, but he's always fought this close to the edge. And, as you get older, that becomes more and more likely to end, with tears. So I like Davey, but, this guy Marcos is not coming here to play games. He's coming here to get in a serious fight. And I don't think that he's going to quit at the first sign of adversity either. So Davey's going to have to really earn this one. Jewish Better, what do you think, brother? He stole the thunder with that front kick up the middle. That's what you think?
Dude, that's awesome. Even better, man. Like I was gonna call it, dude. I think Anderson Silva front kick right at the middle. He's thrown it a couple times, and I saw Davey Grant get caught with that strike as well in one of his fights. I can't remember exactly which one, but I think it's possible. I think it might have been the Cheeto Vera fight. But this guy does have some good competition on his record, and I think that's gonna confuse a little bit of people. Like he definitely has a good win over Jonathan Martinez, but he was dropped in that fight. Good win over Martin Day. I guess decent win over Martin Day, but he was dropped in that fight as well, and that's the nickname.
I was going to say, let's walk that one back before we go too far.
Right. So even crazier, he was dropped by Martin Day back in 2020. My topology page wants to refresh, of course. But he has losses to guys like Damian Stasiak, Manny Bermudez, Chris Holdsworth. So this guy's beatable, and if we just look at his last few fights, I think he took a lot of damage in the Adrian Yanez fight, if I'm not mistaken. That was a good striking battle, back and forth, split decision. I thought Adrian Yanez edged that one out. Some people do think Davey Grant did enough in that fight, so that would be an interesting win. But it's the Luis Smolka fight, man. I felt like a lot of people were on Grant KO in that fight. They were just going to think it's easy win for him against Smolka, who kind of seems to be on the back end of his career at this point, even at a younger age. I think he was able to get the job done late in that fight, but it was a close fight, man, if I'm not mistaken. And going tooth and nail with a guy like Luis Smolka and then a 40-year-old guy in Jafel on Sunset, like you said, he was down 2-0 in that fight. So this guy could technically, theoretically be 0-4 in his last few fights. Now, on the Marco side, he has the age advantage here. He's one of the few Peruvian fighters on the roster. I think the only other one is Claudio Puelas. So that's something to keep an eye out on. The UFC wants to keep these guys on the roster. My man Liam, I see you smiling, man, because I got to mention it. I think Daniel Marcos is the side here. I know he hasn't fought on the same level of competition, but he's clean with the striking. I think the straight shots up the middle are going to be the looping shots of Grant. And I think Grant is on the decline here. So I'm going to go with the debutant to stay undefeated here. The only worry I have on him is I haven't seen him as the nail yet, but I've seen him hit before, and he's able to take it and keep coming forward. So I'm not worried about it. But if anyone's going to do it, I guess it's Grant. But I think he's just on the back end of his career, a name a lot of people know. And like you said, I believe on Liam's first look, Marcos might be a name that not a lot of people know. Get him a win over a guy like Davey Grant. Make the push.
You know how I roll, man. I always like to think about what that UFC business model is calling for. And Davey Grant, after a bunch of big wins, bunch of big knockouts, he's probably ran them for some decent paper these last couple times out. And they're like, let's get the guy in here who's doing it for 12-12, 15-15, who's 30 years of age, and we can do another 15 fights with this guy. And so Davey Grant, fun guy, action guy, can still bring it. They'll put him on for more fights in the Apex and wherever. But I do feel like, this is a kind of put up or shut up spot for Davey, and it's a really hard fight, all things considered. So I'm not liking Davey's chances here, to tell you the truth.
I will add one more thing for this fight. So I'm not advising for a big bet on Marcos just because it's like we don't know much about him. This is going to answer a lot of questions. But I will say, maybe look to live bet Davey Grant, man. Marcos in the third round against Brandon Lewis, at least the last 90 seconds, he looked really exhausted. So, I mean, if you're getting tired in a high-paced fight, because Davey Grant's going to put up a high pace, and if maybe Marcos wins the first round, you see him getting a little tired, maybe sprinkle a little bit on Davey Grant live because,
it's going to be a front kick, bro, right up the middle.
It probably is early. If Davey Grant's going to get chinned, I expect it to be in the first round. But, yeah, I think the live betting angle could be decent just because Davey Grant, he's fighting in his home country. He's going to have the power of his people behind him, so maybe he pulls something out of his ass for the second straight fight.
I hear that, brother. So it should be a banger. That's what we know. That's why they put it in this featured spot. But now we're breaking down the main card, and we're bringing in another friend of the show, surprise guest. Our man rolled through the comment section. He's available, so we had to bring him in. Wiz Does, welcome to the building, my brother from another. How are you, dude?
Doing well, doing well. I hope you guys are doing good. Pierce, always a pleasure. Jewish Better, nice to meet you. And Liam, as always, ready to break this main card down. Let's do it.
I love it. All right, 4-man strong. Let's get this panel rocking. Guys, we got a fun one here. At 145 pounds, featherweight fight, we've got Lerone Murphy taking on Josh Kulabau. And Josh Kulabau is a guy, I've been a Kulabau truther, right? Because he came in and got absolutely mushed by Jalen Turner. What else was going to happen there? His manager to send him to the slaughter, right? He's like, yeah, you want to get in the UFC? Do you mind dying one time for us? Like, he just went out there, lamb to slaughter. Tough fight up a weight class against a big guy, big hitter, dangerous finisher. That was always a recipe for disaster. But then his next fight, he's like plus 365 against Jourdain. And I bet him there because I was like, this is a guy who's pretty dangerous guy. And he went out there, got the draw in that spot. I've had a couple of those unfortunate draws, plus 400 on Ricky Glenn against Grant Dawson. A couple of these draws that end up being, close, almost got him at the big plus money, but end up getting the money back at the end of the day. And so for Kulabau, he's actually really performed well in the UFC. 3-0-1 since dropping back down to the featherweight class. And, you're getting him again at plus money here against Lerone Murphy. Lerone Murphy, a dangerous guy. But again, when I try and assemble these red flags at the beginning of the week, I put that out, on my stuff, my information. And when you look at the red flags on Lerone Murphy, this guy has had 2 life-threatening, car accidents. He got hit by a car and he was in a coma on a bicycle. That was last year. He came back and fought Gabriel Santos, gets the, very close decision win to go his way. A lot of people thought that was a controversial decision. So it's like, this guy is kind of living on the edge, had a couple of run-ins with his health. So how much am I supposed to expect that he's going to keep covering these favorite price tags, especially against a guy like Kulabau, who has a 3-to-1 knockdown ratio in the UFC, whereas we got a 1-to-1 knockdown ratio for Lerone Murphy? Is his grappling head and shoulders above Josh Kulabau? I'm not sure about that either. So Kulabau doesn't have a lights out chin. He could still be hurt. He could be rocked. He's not the most athletic guy in the world. I think Lerone Murphy's certainly more athletic than he is. But I also think that the guy who's a little bit more gritty, a little bit more scrappy, could be Kulabau in this fight. And, he's a big, dangerous power puncher on the feet. Lerone Murphy's been dropped before by Zubaira Tuhugov, who's not that big of a hitter on the feet. So I don't know. I think that this is a curious fight and probably a dogger pass for me, but I haven't bet the fight and curious to hear what a very sharp panel thinks about it. So we'll start with our guy Wiz Does because he's new to the panel. What's up, brother?
Yeah, this fight, you almost look at it, they fight in a similar way. I know Kulabau does have that wrestling in his back pocket, and Murphy does concede that bottom time too. So on the feet, I think this is going to play out really close. Obviously, we're in London, so if it just mainly stays on the feet, I think the hometown cooking might serve to benefit Lerone Murphy here. But with all due respect, I don't think Lerone Murphy is a fighter who has a bright future in the UFC. And the reason I say that is because he gets into too many wars. The guy leaves his chin exposed constantly, even though his offensive boxing is excellent, in my opinion. The defensive side is not as much, and we saw him get cracked multiple times in his last fight. And we all know what happened in that last one. I was on the Lerone Murphy side, and I thought I was going to lose a bet until the judges gifted me something. So I'm kind of glad on one hand, but now looking at it from a different standpoint, I got to say Kulabau has a little bit more minute-winning opportunities with the wrestling in his back pocket. And I do think that Kulabau, when facing someone who is willing to stand with him and also is about an equal boxer, I'll have to go with Kulabau just because he has a little bit more grit. He throws with more power than Murphy, in my opinion. And just with the way Murphy leaves his chin open, I'm going to have to side with Kulabau here. And I think Kulabau can hurt him, probably get him out of there late in the second round to third round. I originally was looking at this fight in a standpoint of violence, but after rerunning some tape, I still see it happening, but maybe later on in the fight. So I haven't bet anything here personally. I do think Kulabau wins it, though.
Yeah, and I even feel like my initial lean here was towards the Murphy side, but then I just thought about it more, and I was like, is that just the book selling me on this guy being that great a fighter? Going back and just looking at the stat line, nothing jumps out, and then Makhmud Amirkhani, was putting an absolute clinic on him before he got hit with that knee to the head. So honestly, and Makhmud also has cigarette cardio, as we've talked about on the show before. So I think when you look at a guy like this, he's a very, talented fighter, Josh Kulabau. And here's the narrative nugget. I'll pass it to Jewish Better with. He's from Sydney, New South Wales. The UFC is headed to Sydney, New South Wales, not too far from now. So if he's able to go out there and get that finish, go out there and get a quick win somehow, he could parlay that into a big opportunity, in his home in Sydney. So Jewish Better, how do you feel about this one, brother? Live underdog, or you like the favorite?
Yeah, big move early on the line when he opened. It was minus 225, and we saw it immediately dip right to minus 157 on Bet Online. I guess when it hit DraftKings, I don't think we got a lot of movement, but it seems a lot of the people are on Lerone Murphy's side of the minus 140 price tag. And I think Kulabau is just. I think you're giving Lerone Murphy a little bit too much respect. I actually think he's a little bit one of the most overrated fighters in the UFC. I'm just going to say it right now, right here. I think Kulabau beats him everywhere on the feet. I don't think Lerone Murphy could take him down. We saw in the Shailin Nerdebek fight, beautiful takedown defense from my man Kulabau. He has the power to crack, and he has the jiu-jitsu to go along with it. Man, this guy had one of the toughest debut fights in the UFC history. He comes in against two killers right off the bat. He comes in versus Jalen Turner. I believe that fight was on short notice. Most people get finished in the first round by Jalen Turner. Guy's still young, still improving. I believe he went to the draw with Charles Jourdain, if I'm not mistaken. A good fighter, in my opinion. For his second fight in the UFC, that's insane. This guy's improving every single fight, and I think he's just finding his footing now in the UFC. Whereas Lerone Murphy, similar experience, but he has wins over guys like, I believe he went to a draw with Zabir Tukagov. Kind of similar wins and losses, if you want to say, but I think Kulabau is the more talented fighter. He switches stances beautifully on the feet. I think he's going to use that to confuse Lerone Murphy at points in this fight, throw those beautiful combos that we've seen from him, and he has the power to crack. I think this is a Kulabau spot, underdog all the way. He should be a favorite here. It's just in London, so people are going. The last thing I'll say is a huge tapology percentage for him, and the betting handle is absolutely insane for Lerone Murphy, but yet he seems to be a minus 140 favorite. This is a dog or pass for me all the way.
Oh, could he be the main card parlay buster? No, I'm just playing. We'll pass it over to my guy Pierce and see if he can make this the unanimous panel, because it seems the rest of us think that there's some potential value on Josh Kulabau. But if not, set us straight here, because always like to remind people on this show, sharps have different opinions on these fights. So curious to see what you think, brother.
Yeah, but before I get into it, shout out to my boy Marty. Y'all go check out his YouTube channel, Wiz Does. He just interviewed today the Cassius Clay Collard. So, shout out to him, man. He's doing his thing in the PFL. Just don't tell Solomon you did that interview. He might not like that. But going back to this fight, I wish I could pick Kulabau, but, Lerone Murphy's my guy. Got to go with him here. Not a passionate take, man. I just think it's a close fight. When you look at these two guys, it's going to probably be two strikers. I've seen some people saying Kulabau can maybe go for takedowns. I don't really think that's going to be the case. I think it's just going to be they're just going to strike it out. It's going to be a high-level fight, man, and it's just one I don't really want to have too much money on. When you look at Kulabau, he does a lot of things well. He's very basic, but at the end of the day, the basics are what win you fights. And he switches stances a lot, which could cause problems for Lerone Murphy when it comes to finding his range. But one thing I will say about Lerone that I think could be a good weapon for him in this fight is the leg kicks. I really like Lerone's leg kicks that he has in his game. And I did play a flyer on this. I don't know why I did it. I told Liam I played some lunch money on Lerone Murphy by sub. So maybe hope Lerone Murphy goes for takedowns. Probably not going to happen. But that's my only action on the fight. But yeah, maybe split decisions. Honestly, I don't know what the props are or the prices for the props are, but maybe split decisions and overs, because I think it's just going to be a close fight.
Yeah, one thing with the leg kick, the only thing I think he's going to nullify that with the switch stance. I think he's going to get the inside position on him, take away that leg kick, and jab up Lerone Murphy, bro. That's really the read I got on this fight. And I know I'm coming strong, but this guy in the comments said, does this guy even watch film? So he must have a ton of money on Murphy. Bro, you're about to lose a bunch of money. I hate to tell you, bro. Sorry.
Yeah, that along with we saw what happened when Lerone Murphy went up against Amir Khani, and Amir Khani is a really talented grappler. I'm not saying anywhere near the level of Kulabau for sure. Kulabau is much less of a grappler, but I do think Kulabau, if you watch some of his fights on that regional scene, you'll see that he does go to the wrestling. And what did he do against Melsik? I mean, he was able to grab a hold of him towards the end of the round and take him down, get that sub. So it's not a far-fetched possibility here, but
He has good finishing instincts, which is what I look for in people that actually finish fights. At the UFC level, especially, like most of these guys are really tough. They don't want to give up. They want to win the fights. It's important to their financial life, their well-being, if they could win this fight for more money. So you need guys that really want to finish and that are intentional about when they get somebody hurt or when they have an opportunity looking to finish. And for Josh Kulabau, the one thing I'll note is I did have 0.8 units on him at plus 365 against Jourdain. I had 1 unit against him against Sungwoo Choi at plus 200. So he's been a dog 2 other times in the UFC. He won and draw. I'm talking about at 145. At 155, he was a bigger dog against Turner, and he got absolutely whomped. But his results as a dog at 145 are 1, 1, and 0. That's quite good. And his ROI has been exceptional, let me tell you. 111% ROI if you had bet him in both those spots before. So again, I'm not saying I can see the future. Josh Kulabau will win the fight. I'm trying to figure out whether there's betting value. This is a prediction show. So just remember, at the end of the day, I'm wrong. I'm right on all these fights, but I'm here every week. I have an opinion backed up by some evidence, and we hope for the best. That's what we do on the show. So, appreciate everybody in the comments, but take it down one notch. None of us is Nostradamus, right? And how many times do I have to show people leaving comments about Robert Whittaker is the lock of the week, or Andre Fili, there's no way he could lose to Brito, or we could go through every example on the show of the times where the comment section was dead effing wrong. And then we could go through the times when y'all were like, Liam, why are you betting Albert Duraev? And he gets punked by Jin Park. So sometimes y'all will get me and we'll handshake and it's all good, but sometimes I'll get you too. So don't hate, appreciate, or fuck off and go somewhere else. God bless. Next up,
I will add one more thing for the panel, because I was looking at the prices. I was curious your guys' thoughts on I saw that the over 2.5 was minus 200. I had a 66% clip for the over 2.5. What do y'all think about that? I think that's actually a really generous line.
Over 2.5. Interesting. I think it does go over, but I could honestly see either one of these guys snatching up something out of nowhere. Like even the Lerone Murphy and Makwan looked like it was destined to go over, and then it was over in a second. And you're like, what just happened? So I do think both of them kind of have dynamic stopping power, but interested to hear what the panel thinks.
Yeah, as I mentioned, I do think that there is some violence, but if anything, it's going to be late. That's just my gut instinct here after watching the tape, because if this remains on the feet, both guys throw extremely hard, and the technicality from the Murphy side with the striking, he can catch Kulabau. I mean, Melsik caught him a couple of times, and then Kulabau, same way, he can catch Lerone because his durability isn't the best thing in the world. So
both guys have been knocked down in the UFC, so there you go. That could be what's being priced in a little bit.
Yep.
Awesome. I think Melsik's kickboxing is great, but I mean, over 2.5 is a decent bet. I think if you're going over 2.5, you kind of have to assume that it's going to be a close fight. I personally think this is a wash. I think Kulabau dogs him from the center, right from the rip, takes the center of the ring, and overwhelms him. Respect to the guy in the comments too, because I'm not even reading it anymore. But everybody's gonna have differing opinions sometimes. So my man, good luck on your bet. But I'm actually going big the other way, respectfully. But yeah, I do watch tape, and I think your boy is about to get dusted. So there's that.
Next up, let's see who's going to get dusted between Jai Herbert, the Black Country Banger, and Fares Ziam. I think he's called the Smile Killer, Fares Ziam. And Fares Ziam is a young guy, but he's starting to put it together a little bit in the UFC. He's on the verge of being cut. They gave him that Figlak fight, and I thought he was a live enough dog, but I didn't bet it, which was really stupid of me because he ended up looking like a great underdog bet. So, when I look at this fight, I say to myself, people who got in on the early numbers on Fares Ziam probably did their job, because Jai Herbert, while he has some talent and he has some skill, I don't think he has great durability. I don't think he always makes optimal decisions out there. I don't think he's proven it necessarily in this, closely lined fights. So for me, this is a spot where I kind of feel like the younger guy here in Ziam has more of the upside. On first look, I thought plus 145 on Jai Herbert, that sounds a little generous. But then you start peeling back the layers, and they're about the same size, but Jai Herbert's way older, and Jai Herbert has been hurt a number of times. And his big claim to fame is that he has like the knockdown of Ilia Topuria, but that's a 145-pound fighter who came up on short notice and then still ended up sending him to the land of absolute wind and ghosts. Ilia is a very talented guy, but that's also a knockout that could change your life and career. Like, it was a horrific knockout. So I don't think that that's like a benefit. I don't think that was like good experience to add to the belt. It was a really bad knockout loss to take, especially at this advanced stage of his career. So I don't really love this fight for Jai Herbert. I feel like Fares Ziam being put in a position where he could potentially get takedowns if he wants them here, but I also think on the feet he can handle himself fine against Jai Herbert. So barring a knockout for Jai Herbert, I think that Fares Ziam's probably going to win the fight. Pierce, how do you feel about this one, brother?
Yeah, man, honestly, I was looking into this fight, and I couldn't really get a good read on it. I just feel like Fares and Jai are kind of like two similar fighters. They kind of look the same, too, so maybe they're brothers from another mother. They might need to get that DNA test. But when it comes to Fares, I mean, I guess I'll side with him just because he's the younger guy. I didn't realize how old he was till I looked it up. But Jai's like 30, what is he, 34, 35, something like that?
I think 35 against 25, if my memory serves.
Dude, that's insane. It's like Jai, he's a good fighter, at least maybe like 5-6 years ago. But it's like now, doesn't seem like the same guy. I know you said Ilia sent him to the land of the ancestors. That's a bad knockout to come from. And I mean, you saw in the Kyle Nelson fight and even in the Klein fight a little bit, he was looking to like grapple more. I mean, that was also because their opponents also looked for takedowns as well. But I just think it's a striking fight where Fares is probably the younger, more hungry guy, and he's the one I see making improvements. And Jai, he's probably on the card just because he's the hometown guy. So maybe they gift him a decision, but it's hard not to say Fares' decision.
I've been thinking to myself, my kind of like controversial angle here would be, I think this is the one where he could break through and get the finish, because I don't really rate the durability of Jai Herbert. So when I look at this, they priced the decision the exact same as the ITD for Ziam. And I feel like that's to throw people off here and make them say, well, I've seen the decision a bunch of times and it's the same price, so now I got to go with the decision. But for me, I do feel like there's some sneaky ITD upside here because I think he could hurt him. I think he could club and sub him. Figlak, I don't think had ever been beaten before. So the idea of going out there and finishing him, you got to teach those guys to lose. Jai Herbert knows how to lose. He's been finished a bunch of times. He's been hurt a bunch of times. So I think it could be, a matter of time with such a young guy. I feel like Fares could afford to get hit with a couple big shots here and recover. Whereas I think if Jai gets hit with a big shot, the fight's probably going to be over shortly thereafter. What do you think about this one, Jewish Better? Seems like a nod of agreement.
Oh yeah, baby, and you're saying that it's priced, I believe, to end inside the distance. Under 2.5 is plus 125, so you're probably sitting around a pick 'em fight for this fight to end inside the distance. And if you're telling me that, then man, I think the most likely path is, is he gonna sub Ziam? We've seen Ziam only get outclassed really on the ground by McKinney, and he gets submitted. His problem is when people are taking him down. Jai Herbert isn't gonna take him down. That's not happening. He's trained at Killcliff FC. He has a big age advantage here. We know the younger fighter wins a certain percentage amount of the time. He also, you were talking about before, right? The Sydney card, right? We have also a UFC Paris coming up. Not many French fighters, man. And if he's able to get a quick knockout here, they're going to put him right on that card. Fares Ziam KO TKO sitting at plus 275. Man, when has Ziam gotten a KO? When was his last KO? It's been a while, and you're telling me that it's only plus 275? I think that has to do with the chin issues of Jai Herbert. We've seen him put out by Riz McKee. We've seen him wobbled in his fights, put out by Trinaldo, recently put out by Topuria, who was a lot shorter than him in that fight. And I think a lot of people forget that. That's a lot of the reason Herbert was able to have success versus a guy that's so good like Topuria. So his next fight against Kyle Nelson, I rate Kyle Nelson super low in the UFC. Wasn't able to finish that guy. So now he's going to be able to finish Ziam. I just don't think so, man. This is a Ziam spot for me. I like a money line, and I think a sprinkle on KO is a good bet as well. Let's get that money. Maybe even finish only.
Yeah, I think that Jai's a touch sketchy at his best, right? Whereas Ziam, he could be making significant improvements every fight. Only been getting better training partners, only been getting better work in over time. So I feel like sky's the limit for him. Honestly, he's still got a lot of room to grow, in my opinion. Wiz, how do you feel about this one, my brother? Do you have any action on this fight?
Yeah, in this fight, I do like Fares ZM here. Multiple reasons. Obviously, the age is a big factor here, but more than that, we've seen Jai Herbert get hurt multiple times in the UFC. We've seen him with his tall man defense, and we know how that fares against someone who matches him almost in size, 6'1", 6'1". It's only a 2-inch reach advantage for Jai Herbert, but when it comes to the height, same height. And when that usually happens, and it's a striker versus a striker for the most part, I just don't like the chances for the guy with the worst chin. And I'm not saying that Ziam can only strike. He showed the grappling and wrestling chops last time out against Figlak, who was a pretty decently sized favorite against him. I think Ziam took some time to improve on his game, and then, as you mentioned, only got washed in the wrestling against Terrence McKinney, which we know the pedigree Terrence McKinney has when it comes to the grappling and wrestling. Is just he doesn't have that cardio to match it. So I think ZM is going to be the much faster striker here. And as long as it stays on the feet, there's always going to be that opportunity for ZM to get that knockout just with the way that Jai leaves his chin open. So I think ZM pressures him against the cage, probably gets a takedown or two, and stops this fight via ground and pound. That's just my gut instinct here. No bet on it yet, but I'm ever so close to playing the ZM side.
Fair play, my man. I would let people know, make sure you shop around prices because, it's as low as plus 275 for the KO and as high as plus 400. So you could find very disparate numbers if you do some shopping there. So best fight odds, fightodds.io, do your due diligence, any skins that you have access to, and see what the best numbers you can get are before you fire away. But definitely some good plus money here on the table if you're looking to get involved that way. And we seem to think that there's a pretty clear favorite here in Fares Ziam. And I wanted to like Jai Herbert more, but I just didn't, I did the research and I didn't like it. So next up, boys, let's talk about this middleweight fight where we've got Andre Sergipano Muniz back in the spotlight, taking on Paul the Berju Craig. Paul Craig making his 185-pound debut here. Don't know how that's going to fare for him at 35 years of age, coming down 20 pounds here from 205 pounds to 185. Didn't love it, honestly, in theory. So let's see how it looks in practice, right? We're going to see the weigh-ins tomorrow. We're going to get a better indication of how he's feeling, how he's looking, how he's moving, what his body composition looks like. But when you look at Andre Muniz, he's a big fellow. He's got a lot of musculature. It's no surprise why he gasses out a little bit in his fights. But I honestly think it's more from tension than anything else. He's a very tense fighter. And Brendan Allen was putting a very high pace on him, as he tends to do to people. And Sergipano is not the most dangerous guy on the feet. He's got good hooks. He'll throw with a lot of intention. He'll throw some big body kicks, some big low kicks. But he's not very good at putting all his strikes together. He's more interested in just getting a takedown and then changing the fight with his top game. Go back and watch that Eric Anders fight. Eric Anders has gone against some good guys, some good grapplers, some talented people. Dude, he took him down with a blast double leg that looked like it was straight out of like a college wrestling match. Like head down, bang, grabbed a hold of him and then flung him like Eric Anders wasn't a former college football player. Like just absolutely muscled him. And then once he got to the ground, it was just step 1, step 2, step 3, and then it's terrible positions and it's over. That arm bar that he hits is disgusting, and it will break your arm in so many ways it's hard to explain. So, he doesn't do traditional stuff, and I feel like for Paul Craig, his advantage is normally I got this insane, back of my pocket submission game, and I just feel like meme submissions against Andre Muniz is probably not the ticket. I feel like Andre Muniz on the feet, superior striker, honestly. His durability is not great. Paul Craig can hit hard. He can sometimes be intentional with his striking. But I feel like in this fight, I can't trust the cardio. I can't trust the durability down at 185. I feel like Andre Muniz is going to be pissed that he just got submitted. My man's a 3rd-degree black belt. He's going to be out here trying to hurt Paul Craig real bad and then submit him, in my view. And I think he's capable of doing both those things. So I like Andre Muniz, but I've been too bullish on my guy in the past. Not to say that I think I've won all my bets on him, but just I picked him against Brendan Allen. I was like, how can he lose against Brendan Allen? But then afterwards, hindsight's 2020, right? Pace will make cowards of us all. It doesn't matter if you're better at jiu-jitsu. If you get paced on the feet, then you go to the ground, it doesn't matter. So I think that, Muniz is elite on the ground. And people that forget that will do so at their peril. So, yeah, for me, I think Andre Muniz should win this fight. I think Chris Duncan is the Scotsman that I think has a better chance of getting it done. But I think that this is a uphill battle for sure. Good fight. Paul Craig's got it done a million times. Fun guy, dangerous fighter. But I don't like this move for him at 35 years of age personally. Wiz, how do you feel about this one, my brother?
Yeah, so as you mentioned, Paul Craig moving down to middleweight here, 20-pound difference is huge. And with somebody who already does not have the best chin in the world, an extra 20 pounds off of your body is going to make it even worse. And yeah, Muniz does not have the most technical striking in the world, but those hooks are powerful. And he almost dropped Brendan Allen a couple of times in that fight. I think one of those hooks probably drops Paul Craig, and I think the KO line is a little bit overlooked here. I think Muniz has the grappling to not just match Paul Craig here, but he's definitely a better grappler, third-degree black belt in his own right. And when it comes to someone with a fragile chin, I mean, you can find a club and sub, or you could just get that knockout. I'm not going to rule out Paul Craig completely here, but I do think that Muniz is a justifiable favorite here. At this price, I think there is still a little bit of value personally. So I'm definitely taking the shot on Muniz here, and pretty confidently, I would say. I just think in the striking and the grappling, wherever this fight goes, pretty much Muniz has Paul Craig covered. And especially with the age gap too, Muniz has something to prove, and I think he's going to be able to prove it.
Fundamentally disgusted. I hope you guys can hear me okay. I was fundamentally disgusted when I saw the KO prop. It was like plus 500 for our guy Andre Muniz. They're giving you nothing. They're telling you to go F yourself with that number. So for me, it's probably ITD or pass on the Muniz side. I don't want to lay chalk with him after that display against Brendan Allen. Although we have seen him go to decision with Uriah Hall. I just feel like Paul Craig is not a decision guy. He is the guy that is going all out for the win from round one until the fight's over. And so for me, that makes me think that whoever wins this fight is going to do it ITD more often than not. And I think it's probably going to be Muniz. Jewish better. Do you agree? Do you disagree? How do you feel about the Bear Jew coming down to 185?
Yeah, man, I feel a little weird. We all keep going with the same guy, and the guy has Jew in his name. So, like, maybe this is the one on me, man. But I just don't trust either of these guys. Both guys are way too reliant on their jiu-jitsu now. Muniz, he's an interesting guy. He's a guy who's going to take you down. His path is take you down, take your back, fall off for the arm bar, break your arm. And I was there when he did that against Jacare Souza. I was at that event live. And I've seen a ton of breaks at just, local jiu-jitsu competitions. People don't want to tap. They get their arm snapped. It's disgusting to watch live. That one was actually one that sticks in my mind. He broke the arm clean, and it was just weird to see Jacare sitting there with his arm in his hand, a jiu-jitsu legend. But at the end of the day, he's a jiu-jitsu guy at heart, and we've seen that in the gas tank. We've seen guys like who are legends in jiu-jitsu, like Rodolfo Vieira. They're just not able to keep the cardio the later the fight goes. Now, I understand, Paul Craig did get knocked out in his last fight, but I don't think he's necessarily chinny. Now, it's not a good look coming down in weight after getting knocked out. I 100% agree on that. But Muniz, he isn't a power puncher at the end of the day, so I really don't want to chase the KO props, hoping that Paul Craig's chin is completely gone, because he's been somewhat durable before that knockout. And that was a crazy back fist on that one. A cool story, funny story, I'll just leave this one off on. I was at the bar for Paul Craig's last fight. And this guy's sitting at the bar, and I had a bet on Johnny Walker on that fight, and Johnny Walker to get the job. Just Johnny Walker money line. I believe it was a pretty good line, actually. And this guy at the bar, he's like, that's the stupidest bet I've ever fucking heard of. Like, Johnny Walker sucks, man. He gets knocked out, and all this. He just kept going off about how Johnny Walker's so bad. So I'm like, dude, I'll bet you $20 or something. He's like, why? Like, that's stupid, bro. You're stupid. I'm like, this guy doesn't even know who the hell he's talking to. End of the day, basically, long story short, I asked him, if he knew who Paul Craig was. And he's like, nah, I never seen that guy fight. I just know Johnny Walker's not good. So that'll just show you how the public will, go sometimes. I see all the time when I'm sitting at the bar. Usually for the people who are at the bar rooting for that person, it's almost a lock the other way. So just keep that in mind. I'm going to go Paul Craig here, though. I think he pulls guard. He gets Muniz in his guard. There's two ways I see this fight happening. I think he gets his guard past, giving up submission for position. I think Muniz is little bit positionally better, but I just don't trust in the gas tank of Muniz either, man. And obviously, I think Muniz is the side here. He's a little bit high priced, but if Paul Craig's going to win this fight, it's probably by meme-like submission while this dude gas. He's done it before versus guys like Ankalaev. Ankalaev was beating his brains in on the mat, literally. So I understand the KO chase, but I think, he has an interesting path with that overhook. He's going to go to the ground, posture up. Maybe he catches Muniz in like a heel hook or something. I think they're just going to play footsies. This is going to be a jiu-jitsu match. Why not just have this at a Naga or something, or at the UFC Fight Pass Invitational? Maybe not a bad idea. So I don't know who I'm going with this one. I'm going to go with Paul Craig just because he has Drew in his name, and we've literally been picking everybody the same so far. So blue belt jiu-jitsu or purple belt jiu-jitsu versus the black belt. Somehow the purple belt gets it done. Let's go, Paul Craig.
Best of luck to the Bear Jew there, but when you have a loss via Estima lock to Jed Hugh at Polaris in 2022,
Kimura by Jimmy
I'm gonna have to be skeptical. Yeah, exactly. When you have a third round submission loss to Jimmy Crute, I'm gonna be skeptical in your submission upside against against Andre Muniz when the number's plus 380. I mean, it's a disgustingly low number. You've gotten better numbers to fade like Nikita Krylov and people, guys. Like, So with all due respect, I do think that's a little wild. Pierce, what do you think, my brother? Give us the closing rendition for this fight.
Yeah, I honestly think all of y'all touched on most of the points for the fight. It's every Paul Craig fight's pretty volatile, honestly. And you got Andre Muniz. I mean, y'all said the KO. I got a good number on it. I got like plus 800 on Monday. So I was just like, fuck it, I'll take that line. Hopefully it's the two grapplers. They bang it out. We saw in his last fight, Muniz tried to test his kickboxing against Brendan Allen. He didn't look half bad on the feet. So I guess maybe in this matchup, don't even go to Paul Craig's guard. Just try to strike. And I think maybe he finds the head kick. Hopefully it's not a club and so, because that would be very tilting. But yeah, Andre Muniz by KO, but money line, I'm not really trying to get too invested in it. I've tried to fade him in the past, so I'm not going to just all of a sudden turn around and try to bet him heavy at minus 220, minus 225. It's pretty accurate, honestly.
I tend to agree, especially when a guy is more so finish or bust. But Paul Craig's not the biggest knockout threat himself. It's more so fading the chin of the other guy, fading the cardio of the other guy. So you don't really want to do that at much less than a 30% clip. So overall, fun fight, volatile, but I do think that that's a Brazilian that I think gets the job done in Andre Muniz. But he's going to have a tough task. So Paul Craig always brings the energy, right? And I think it's going to be interesting to see how he approaches a guy like Muniz, because normally he brings that like fire brand energy, but it's kind of been backfiring on him the last few times, right? He did that to Vulcan, and then Vulcan whooped his ass. So I think maybe Paul Craig's going to come out like handshake, like big smile. Hi, how are you? Good to see you. And I think it'll be interesting to see that play out. Next up, featherweight, Nathaniel Wood. What do they call him? The prospect? Still at this age? Yes, indeed. Nathaniel Wood, 29 years of age, the prospect, taking on Andre Touchy Feely. Is it the worst name in all of MMA? Who knows? It could be, though, especially in 2023. In any case, Andre Feely, he's a fun guy, banger, big kicks, big punches. The fight against Pineda looked really good. But otherwise, he's a guy that's kind of at best in the last couple of years winning some nip-tuck split decisions. He hasn't been showing that same finishing equity in the recent years, and I've been fading him a little bit. When the opportunities arise, 10-1 on Joe Anderson Brito ITD, most insane price I can remember in MMA, maybe, and then plus 250 on the money line. Great spots, and again, everybody was saying Feely's the parlay piece of the week. You got to put him in the parlays. Parlay up Feely this week, and it's because this guy was unproven. Right. And then he shocks the world. Nathaniel Wood is not an unproven fighter. He's like a UFC level guy for sure, but he was having a hard time staying at 135, I felt like, because he was not having a great time with the weight cuts. He was struggling to keep up for 15 minutes. He was struggling to take the punches at the weight class. Moved up to 145. I felt like he's been exceeding my expectations both times out at 145. I would have liked to see him get the finish. I think his finishing instincts could use work, especially at 145, but he's doing a lot of damage. He's distancing himself from his opponents. He's making it clear who wins the fight. So I feel like he's been answering the call in these last couple fights, and this is a harder fight. This is a little bit more of a test. But when my gut, and my research confirm, I feel like Wood at worst wins a unanimous decision here more often than not. And I feel like he has a chance to finish Andre Fili as well. Fili is there to be hit. When you're landing a huge volume of strikes, it doesn't take a perfect shot. It doesn't take that much power. It just takes landing the right shot at the right time when somebody's moving, when they're out of position. And I think he could catch Fili here. I think he's a little faster, a little more dynamic. And I also think he's got a decent submission game that's opportunistic. So I don't think he's going to out-grapple Fili, but I think he could catch Fili. And this is MMA. At the end of the day, you don't need to be better than somebody at grappling for 5 minutes. You need to be better for 10 seconds. That's it. So I just think that Nathaniel Wood has good catches when he knows that somebody's hurt. And we haven't seen that at 145, but I think that we could still see it. So, I'm seeing big prices on Nathaniel Wood by sub, and that did catch my eye because he has gotten a couple submission finishes over lower level guys. But I just think that the opportunities to fade Fili ITD are going to be fewer and further between in the future. So a couple of things that I'm thinking about here. But fun fight, good scrap, and I'm interested to see what our guy Pierce has to say about this one, brother.
Yeah, man, I've always been a big Nathaniel Wood guy, and this is a fun matchup, man. I'm not going to lie to y'all. I'm not going to go crazy on the bets with him. But, he's with my boy Diakiese. They're homies, so I talked about how much I love Diakiese. So, you know what? We'll just say fuck it. We'll do parlay of the week, Nathaniel Wood and D1 Diakiese. If you want to get on the journey to financial freedom, you want to get out of the projects, want to move out of your apartment, you put all your money on that parlay, and if it loses – I'm sorry. We'll start looking up your nearest soup kitchen and get packing. But in this matchup, Nathaniel Wood. So he's a good fighter, man. I really love his game. There's not really much holes in his game that you can point out other than his striking defense. Not even his striking defense. It's like he's shown a poor chin at times. I can't get out of my head him getting slept by John Dodson, but. It's John Dodson, man. That dude hits like a truck. But when I look at this matchup, Fili, his path to victory is a decision. And I did play an early number on Fili decision. If you can get better than like plus 350, I got plus 400 myself. I think it's a good number on his path to victory. But I also did throw a quarter of a unit on Nathaniel Wood by KO. I think it was, I don't know what it is now. I haven't been paying attention to the lines, but I got plus 1,000. Is it close to that right now, or did it take a lot of money?
Let me see. It sounds like it's come down from that just instinctually, but let me hear. Wood by KO is plus 500.
Okay, yeah. So maybe we'll stay away from Wood KO. Maybe just take the ITD because I know Liam's preaching about the sub. But my thought process on the KO is like we've seen Fili chinned a couple times. I know from memory. I know obviously Burrito knocked him out. That dude's a Terminator. Pretty crazy number. You got 10-1 on that ITD, man. In hindsight, man, that's
at the casino too. I was like, "Are you guys serious?" All right, kiosk bet.
They're not taking any action from you again after that. That's all I can say. But we saw Charles Jourdain. He dropped him too, and I can't remember if anybody else did. But Nathaniel Wood's going to come to fight, and I feel like what's going to win him the fight is his ability to brawl in the pocket. I think Fili wants to keep it cute at range. I will say the right high kick for Fili might be a little bit dangerous for Wood. We have seen Wood eat high kicks before, so be careful of that. But if Wood can just make it a dirty fight, get in the clinch, bust him up to the knees to the body, I feel like Wood's going to have the superior volume by a good amount. I think if I remember correctly, Wood's like the least amount of strikes he's thrown in a UFC when it's gone to decision is like 90 or 95, something like that. And Fili's a good fighter, man, but I just feel like he's going to be at a massive volume advantage or massive volume disadvantage. So you got to go Wood here at minus 200. It's about accurate, but yeah, Nathaniel Wood's probably going to get the job done.
Yeah, and I didn't bet the money line here, but I think it is a pretty clear pick here, and I do think that there could be some value on the props. But to your point, it's a little bit finicky because the reason I think he's the side on the money line is I think he's live to win by all methods, right? So, like, you could just be, betting into a little bit of variance here, but again, you're getting pretty wide numbers on those finish props because he hasn't materialized one in some time, but it could be the right opponent at the right time. Think Charles Rosa and who is the other opponent most recently? Those guys are like known for just durability and staying in the fight. That's it. Like nothing on offense. So Jourdain obviously has some offense, but very tough, durable guy, even against Kulabau. Got dropped 10-8 round, came back to win some rounds there. So not easy guys to finish. I feel like in this spot, maybe a guy who's a little bit more prone to being finished at this point in his career. Still very tough, but he was getting jumping high kick knocked out by Yair Rodriguez in 2016. So it's not like it's just starting to happen now for the first time. Jewish Better, how do you feel about this one, brother?
Yeah, I mean, when we look at it on paper, yeah, I think Wood's supposed to win the fight, but we got to remember at the end of the day, we're not betting who do we think is gonna win the fight, right? We got to bet the price here, and at the end of the day, I'm seeing some plus 180s on Feely. Feely's a guy who's fought in a much better level of competition, in my opinion. The Pineda fight was kind of weird. I believe it ended by eye poke, but I think he was going to win that fight. It looked like he was on his way to winning that fight. You know, Pineda fight fades the later the fights goes, and Feely was looking good in that fight. So the Brito knockout was a weird one. I think, you know, the later that fight could have gone, he would have been able to get the dub, but Brito was just a tank at the end of the day, and he was able to knock him out. We haven't seen him knocked out before then since, 2016, Yair by flying high kick, like you said. Charles Jourdain's a good striker as well at the end of the day. He was able to drop him, but Feely didn't get finished in that fight, still able to come back and win that fight. I just think he's a good veteran, and you say, he gets hit a lot. And Wood does put out a lot more volume than him, but 4.03 strikes, 8 from him. Wood is a 135er. I do think the power is kind of translating, but he hasn't put in anyone away yet. But you do see him stun some people in his fights. Charles Rosa, though, I'm not going to rate that win too high, and he did have a good win his last time out. Who did Wood fight versus Charles Jourdain? That was a close fight. I think the wrestling got him the job done there. I don't think he's going to have the same success grappling against Feely, so I think this fight could be a lot closer than that Jourdain fight, on the feet and on the ground as well. I think actually Feely could maybe even put him on the ground at certain points, just having such a huge size. But like Pierce said, he's going to want to stay at range. He has the reach advantage. He's the bigger fighter. So at plus 180, I got to take me some shot on some Feely as well. I just think, we've seen this guy lose against John Dodson. He got knocked out in that fight against Casey Kenny. I know these fights were down a weight class, but, I just think Feely's a live dog here, and we got to bet the price. Plus 180. I think he's the side here, in my opinion. And also, 90% of Tapology votes on Nathaniel Wood. Like I said, he should be the A side here, but I think Feely's more than a live dog.
Yeah, I do not expect Wood to be taking him down with great consistency here. I think it's more so going to come down to the volume edge on the feet. And any grappling upside I see is after he does some damage on the feet to Feely. I don't see him getting him while he's sober, as I like to say. He's going to have to get him drunk with a little bit of power punching and then go for those finishes on the mat. But to the point of Mimi in the comments, says if Casey Kenny can stop the takedowns, I'm sure Feely can. I actually think Feely is a good wrestler. Dennis Bermudez, one of the most winningest wrestlers in the history of Section 9, which is where I'm from. So shout out to him. And dude, he was able to stop a lot of takedowns from Dennis Bermudez, who's built to wrestle. He's like 5'6", right at your hips. Had a lot of opportunities there, and Feely made it a very tough fight for him and made it, a difficult time to wrestle him as well. So I don't think that Wood's going to have an easy time wrestling him, but I think if he can mix it in with the striking, he just does more things. He does more volume and activity in the wrestling and in the striking. But, the thing that stood out about what Pierce had said too was his best chance to win is probably a decision. And I just think a Londoner in London and your best chance to win is by decision. It's like that is a uphill battle for sure. But at the plus 180 tag, I think that's where you start to get more interested, as opposed to, if it's an even money spot, you're like, not going to get it up for that. But plus 180, you have a little bit more room for variance. So, Wiz, how do you feel about
man.
Yeah, I mean, I think this fight is lined correctly. I think it's lined accurately, personally. At the opener where Feely was like a plus 300 underdog, that's just way off. Now, if you were to ask me personally who I would be betting, just at the current price, it would have to be Feely. One of the biggest things for me when I cap fights is I do like when they're both competent on their feet, competent in what they do, they're technical. I'll look at that size advantage, if there is any room there, and we see it right here. Andre Feely, 5 inches taller, and he's going to have a 5-inch reach advantage here in a fight that's going to be played out on the feet primarily. I think that's going to serve him well. That's one thing. I think Feely can match Nathaniel Wood when it comes to the speed and the striking. but the more technical striker is going to have to be Nathaniel Wood for me. And just the way he was able to outpace Charles Jourdain. And Jourdain did have a size advantage too here. And one thing worth mentioning is the way Wood was able to get around that size advantage was darting in and out. And he did that really effectively. If you go back and run the tape, every single round, the same approach with the striking, darting in and out with the jab, darting in and out with the 1-2, and over again until he found an opening for the hook. And then you just continued repeating, rinse and repeat. So with that being said, I mean, going back to my point of the line being accurate, I'm just going to have to stay away from this fight and watch it as a fan. I think it's going to be a banger, and best of luck to you boys, because I can't pick between the two.
Thank
Hell
you.
yeah, man. The comments are blowing up a little bit here too. A lot of people have strong opinions both ways here. So I think they're going to get a lot of volume. I think the bookmakers are going to be happy about that fact. And honestly, it's been kind of sticking around this point of resistance. It feels like -200, +170, +180 type of range. I feel like it's going to close around that as well. Maybe +160, something like that. I feel like there will be some love that comes in on the Feely side because he's a little more proven. But at 33 years of age, I think that it's probably a time where his career is starting to slow down just a little bit. So it's a question of, has he slowed down enough that this guy's caught up to him? Great fight. And let's find out on Saturday. Next up.
Last thing I want to say, I
please, go
know
ahead.
we all keep doing this, but it's like, I got to say it, man. You said that, in the last fight versus Charles Jourdain's a 145er. He didn't have a problem with that side. I think Charles Rosa and Charles Jourdain are pretty small for the weight class. I think Feely's by far the biggest guy he's fought so far, and it shows in the reach. 69-inch reach, both for his last two opponents, whereas Feely's coming in at, let's see, 74. That's a 5-inch reach, difference. So he's finally at a reach disadvantage here, and I just want to see how he reacts to that. That's my only last thought on this fight.
I'll also
Absolutely.
add one more
No,
thing.
please do.
Sorry. I feel like this is important because I know Wiz is talking about maybe just enjoy the fight. And this is kind of leading me towards that. We need to factor in both these guys are coming in off injuries. I know Wood tore his ACL. He's supposed to fight Lerone Murphy, who these two are weirdly beefing this week. And it's very weird, the banter that they have between each other. But also Andre Feely, I think he just had like a detached retina, so he had to get like emergency eye surgery on that. I was reading an article that says he started losing his vision, so it's sketchy on both ends. So maybe don't.
How did I not come across that in my red flag research? I got to go back and do a little
That's
more
a
due
nugget.
diligence on that front. But I definitely I thought that I read on Tapology that Wood had a laceration, like basically like a cut on his leg that prevented him from competing with Lerone Murphy. So I got to read a little bit more into that and figure out exactly what the injury was. But yeah, that was the thing, was like him and Lerone Murphy are beefing about the fact he pulled out of the fight, but I'm pretty sure like a checked kick or something, he cut his leg and just didn't want to fight him with like an open gash on his leg or something. So
Yeah, cut
kind of
leg,
makes
got
sense. But
infected.
yep, unfortunate. But hopefully those two guys, if they both get the win, then they square off, or if they both take the L, then they square off. Either way, would like to see some beef settled. Maybe next time they come to London. Next up, we got Molly McCann, Meatball, back in the driver's seat, taking on Julija Stoliarenko, 1-5 in the UFC, coming down to 125 pounds, despite the fact she was hospitalized, trying to make the cut to 135 pounds just 2 years ago. So interesting, a bold move here, Cotton. Let's see how it plays out. First, we're going to kick this to my guy, Wiz. We'll see how you feel about this one, brother. I do not want to start us off for every fight, so we'll kick it to the panel first, and I'll give you guys my thoughts as we circle back around.
Absolutely. And I feel like there was only one way to bet this fight, and it was to wait for the weigh-ins. But obviously, those who got that early price on Yulia Stoliarenko, props to you, because amazing price. As long as she's able to make the weight, I think it's a lot closer than that line at +260 to +285. I wish I had that line personally, but I just didn't have the guts to pull the trigger. When you look at this fight, we know what Molly McCann does. She's just a very aggressive boxer. Not kickboxer, very aggressive boxer. And she'll be in your face. She'll pressure you nonstop. And when, on the other hand, you look at Yulia Stoliarenko, we have someone who has a pretty decent grappling acumen, is able to get the arm bars, similar to how Ronda Rousey was able to get them nonstop. And on the mat, if Yulia Stoliarenko comes in and makes the weight, looks healthy, I think this line is going to be, it's going to prove to be very inaccurate because I think Stoliarenko is going to be able to take Molly McCann down and give her a tour of the octagon when it comes to the mat. I think Yulia Stoliarenko by sub is a good look here, obviously. But the one thing that we've seen from both ladies is the cardio is somewhat decent. I'll give the edge to Molly McCann. But the one thing is Molly McCann on the mat is pretty inadequate. She's not able to move through these positions as someone else would. So I'm going to have to go with Yulia Stoliarenko here for my breakdown, for my pick. And God willing, she makes that weight cut and she looks good. So we'll see.
Hell yeah, brother. Wishing you the best of luck on that one. Jewish better. Do you agree, disagree? How do you feel about this fight?
Yeah, I was 50-50 on this fight all week, but I think I'm coming to the conclusion that I'm on the Stoliarenko or pass side. I really was trying to find a reason to take Molly McCann when she hit minus 190. I thought that could have been a good price, but I just think she's getting consistently overvalued due to the name value. This is women's MMA at the end of the day. Usually with WMMA, I like to take the person I think has the grappling advantage, could get it to the ground. And she's actually shown a pretty decent double leg in some of her fights. She got the job done versus Jessica Rose Clark. Not the best win in the UFC. Chelsea Chandler just completely outsized her, in my opinion. Not a good look when we seen her running away this weekend. That was one of the most meme-like moments of the year.
Ends by KO plus 325. Didn't cash. Just want everybody to remember that fact. All right.
Oh, my Lord. Oh, my Lord. But at the end of the day, I just think if she's going to get it done, it's probably when she's dry. It's probably going to be early. It's probably going to be a round one sub. I don't have a bet on it, but I think, at some point this is going to hit the mat. And she's going to get the job done. Maybe off one of those spinning back fist attempts like Alexa Grasso. She gets her to the ground, and then she's able to work her game there. I know. I think fight doesn't go the distance could be a sharp play. We see these women's 125s end a lot more frequently than one would think. And Molly McCann, like you said earlier in the week, she's been going under in her last few fights. This is an interesting spot. I just don't think Stoliarenko makes the weight. She passed out on the scale at 135, guys. So what are we really talking about here? Is this fight even going to really happen? Flip a coin and you tell me. So I say it doesn't.
Minus 160 doesn't happen.
All right, Pierce, are you taking action on the doesn't happen or does happen at these play? What do you think about this fight, brother?
Yeah, I mean, Stoliarenko, she does look like online that she's getting in good shape, so that's always good to see. But they call her, like Cody Safdie says, Stolia Stinko. I mean, she's horrible. The only reason she's in the UFC is so they can boost other fighters against her. And I mean, just look at the placement on the card, man. She's 1-5 in the promotion. She's in a co-main spot with Molly McCann, and you're telling me the UFC wants Stoliarenko to win. I mean, I know a lot of the times it doesn't always go to what the promotion wants, but like I'm not really here to overthink it. I'm not advocating for a big bet on Molly McCann because she does have her grappling deficiencies, but I mean, Laura Procopio and Erin Blanchfield are a lot better grapplers when it comes to like their process than Stoliarenko. I mean, maybe you want to bet her round one submission, but if she doesn't get the round one submission, I feel like it's going to go downhill very quickly. Stoliarenko's cardio is not that good, and I saw some people mention it, and I was like, it's worth a flyer. Maybe Molly McCann, round 3 and round 2 submission on a gassed out Stoliarenko, man. I think it was like 55-1 for round 3 submission and like 40-1 for round 2. I don't think she even has a submission in her career, but why not, man? It's women's MMA. Shit happens.
I think she has maybe gotten some pre-UFC. I don't think she has any UFC level submissions. But to your point, Pierce, when I look back at her resume, I'll walk you guys through my thought process, right? So first thing, I look at the lines and I go plus 280. I was like, that just feels wrong. And I'm like looking at it, I'm like plus 280. I was like, do I bet this? And I was like, I don't know. I'll sleep on it. Sleep on it, wake up. It's plus 200. I was like, okay, I will not be betting the money line. That is decided for me. I missed the boat, right? And it's continued to gradually drift down a little bit more and a little bit more, right? And when I look at this fight, I say to myself, Stoliarenko definitely has some submission upside here. because we've seen Molly McCann put in dangerous situations. We've seen her taken down. We've seen her out-grappled before. And we've seen Stoliarenko implement a grappling-heavy game, knows that that's her bread and butter, comes out there, tries to take people down, tries to fight to the bitter end and fights where she can. But I did not like that response against Chandler, right? I just thought that was a terrible look for her. Got to exactly the position she wanted, and then, not very long after she's getting finished. It's just like that as a grappler is not something you want to see. It's like, I love to see perfect jiu-jitsu in the sense of step 1, step 2, step 3, and it's over. The best grapplers, that's the people you want to support in the grappling. That's what it should look like, especially if there's a big mismatch. And I felt like she had the better grappling there. Like we just saw Norma Dumont go out there and clinically out-grapple Chelsea Chandler as well when she wanted to, and also beat her up on the feet. So like Norma Dumont's not setting the world on fire. She's a good fighter, not a great fighter, has losses in the UFC to average level girls. I just feel like that kind of told me where Stoliarenko's at and also why the UFC put her here. Because I do think Stoliarenko has a win over the most armbarable girl in the UFC's history in Jessica Rose Clark. I faded Jessica Rose Clark to a good chunk of change. And additionally, Tainara Lisboa cashed her when she came into the UFC as well. So when I look at that side, I just think Jessica Rose Clark didn't want to be there. I don't think she had any interest in fighting. Talked about her game plan being, I'm going to go out there and strike. Went out there, instantly grappled and got submitted. It's like, that is as on the nose as you can get for WMMA, right? But Molly McCann, tough girl. Very hard to beat. Talia Santos, one fight away from challenging for a title. Couldn't submit her. Couldn't finish her on the mat. Lara Procopio, black belt. When she's not having women problems, she's out there putting on really good performances in the octagon. I wish she's still got another chance. I think she's a good fighter. In any case, like Lara Procopio, she was able to survive that fight as well. So I look at this.
She was plus 200, dog. Laura Procopio, bro. That was one of my favorite bets I've ever cashed, man.
Hell yeah, dude.
Easy.
Good man. But here's the thing. Is like, I look at that and I say, Lara Procopio also can throw on the feet. Like, not good, not a great striker, but willing and not afraid to get into a banging out slugfest. Stoliarenko, she's not afraid to do that, but I just don't rate her offense. I feel like she's very porous in her defense, and I feel like her offense isn't very effective. So I do think this is going to be a finish for Molly McCann. When I look at the fight, I do think that the sub is live. To Pierce's point, I don't think that would happen early and fresh. I do think she's at a submission disadvantage, but I looked at a couple props on this card, including the ends by methods. And if you were to take Stoliarenko by sub, it's like +3 some. I think take +300 on ends by sub and then give yourself that equity in case she gasses out down the stretch. Because I do think Stoliarenko, I would be surprised if she won this by a method other than sub. Is she going to win a decision against Molly McCann? She would have to kill her. Is she going to win by knockout? I would be a little bit surprised, to tell you the truth. I just don't think that's her game. So then I think she has to win this by sub. You can get a good plus money number and give yourself that additional equity. So that's kind of how I would look at it for this fight. I'd look at that plus money line. I would look at some plus money props on the McCann side for me personally. Maybe some round props for your fighter. I think it's +850 sub round 1. I mean, Stoliarenko is a sub round 1 fighter. Don't misunderstand. Maybe a late sub, but that's even impractical because anybody that's grappled before knows arm bars in particular, harder to do when somebody's sweaty. You want somebody who is dry, that cannot move their arm, cannot clear their elbow line, and finish them. And by the way, she'll break arms. So she can really win this fight early, but I just don't trust her down the stretch. I feel like she is more of a quitter than Molly McCann, who's a very tough girl, who's just not that skilled. So when she goes against the Erin Blanchfields of the world, who are really good grapplers and who, by the way, in my humble opinion, would wrap Julija Stoliarenko up and turn her every which way but lose, I think Erin Blanchfield is just the truth. And that was an unfortunate. I even thought Molly was going to compete better there. She showed a lot of heart, a lot of toughness, but just the technique was so far behind that she was in worse position. She got out of bad spots there. I feel like that showed the toughness that I need to see for this fight. I think she's going to get the win. So for me, I like Molly Meatball McCann, not with massive conviction, but I think she gets the win here. That takes us to the main event.
Can't bet these sub or bust guys, man. Oh,
yeah,
sorry, I had to do it one last time.
You got to take the props. You got to take the props, or you got to be creative, or you got to go first, right? Because at +280, we're having a whole different conversation. But now a lot of that equity has been drawn out, and if it's a sub or bust fighter, then the money line gets less appealing. But
last thing, my bad.
No, go ahead.
I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. What do you think about the under 2.5 fight doesn't go the distance on this fight?
I don't
Liam,
mind
my
that
bad.
because I think Stolyarenko's a big time gasser, to tell you the truth. And I think in this fight, she will gas way faster, cutting to 125. I don't think her durability will translate, but I think her finishing equity is still going to be there with the submission early. So I do prefer the under here. But the one thing I will note is the fight doesn't go to decision is probably the angle I would look at, because we've seen Molly get a couple of the late ones. She will continue to pursue the finish until the very end of the fight. So couple things to keep in mind there.
Dude, it's minus 180 for a woman's fight to not go the distance, man.
That's telling you something.
I cannot play that, man.
I won't be playing that then, but that's my lean, honestly. I don't think it's going to decision, but that also is a little bit telling, right? Because the book is normally not trying to give you plus 150 on a women's goes to decision, and they're doing it. So that's something a little bit interesting to me. Whereas conversely, Ketlen Vieira and Pannie Kianzad, who are bigger girls that have recorded knockdowns in the UFC, is plus 250 to end inside the distance. So just I like to always look at points of comparison, right? That's a good point of comparison where we're talking about even bigger women with more proven finishing upside in some ways. And it's an interesting fight. But now let's move to this main event, guys. Heavyweights, very fun fight here. I just want to ask, before we get into the action, make sure you drop a like on the video, get subscribed to the channel where we're talking about these UFC fights each and every week. Make sure you show some love to our guest, our guy WizBets. I don't have his write-up in the description yet because he's an impromptu guest. Our guy Pierce, you guys can find him in a bunch of places, but most especially Big Bird. He's on betmma.tips. You'll easily find him there, tracking a lot of very sharp information. And our guy Jewish Better, his information is in the description box below. Been a recurring guest on the show. So huge shout out to the panel. Huge shout out to the chat for rocking with us live. Make sure you drop a like, show a subscribe, drop a comment below the video to make sure that we know you're showing love and truly appreciate that. So with that being said, let's talk about this main event. I want to hear from my great guest. I've said a loquacious amount of words on this podcast. So let's talk to our guy Pierce and hear what he has to say. I think you said you actually have a parlay on this main event. So curious to hear how you got to Tom Aspinall moneyline.
Honestly, man, it's square. I know a lot of people are on the Muradov Aspinall parlay, man, but we're betting the squash matches in London, man. I mean, I'm trying not to overthink this fight, man. Do I think Aspinall minus 450 is a good bet long term? No. In this matchup, man, I know Tybura is streaking, but it's like Aspinall is in his home country. If it wasn't for the knee injury, man, maybe he's higher than minus 450, but I just can't help but think he's at a massive striking advantage and he's going to knock Tybura out. Let's not forget the amount of times Tybura has been knocked out before he started going on this win streak. I don't know the exact number, but I think it was like almost like 3 times in a row or something like that. But I see the only thing that I will say is I see a lot of love for the submission line this week with Aspinall. I don't really see it. I think it's going to be the knockout. If Aspinall gets the submission, so be it. But I feel like it's round 1 knockout. Maybe live bet Tybura. I feel like that's a great way to approach the Tybura line because I see a lot of people saying Tom Aspinall should not be this big of a favorite. But if you live bet Tybura, you don't lose money on a round 1 knockout because I don't think he's finishing Aspinall early. And that's all I got to say.
Yeah, I also don't think he's going to finish him early. That would surprise me for sure. Unless Tom throws one naked low kick and then just falls backwards, because that's the only time we've seen him get finished in that kind of fashion in the UFC. Not sure if my guy Jewish Better is around for the. Oh, you ready to pop in, brother?
Baby, we're here, baby.
All right, let us have it. What do you got?
Yeah, man. So I'm under the train that I don't think Aspinall should be this big of a favorite in this fight at all. I think that Tybura, let's just play devil's advocate here because everybody's going to be on the Aspinall side. We're all finding some way to 2-leg. For some reason, everybody wants to 2-leg parlay Aspinall. If you're going to take Aspinall, take him to get the job done in round 1 or round 2, like on FanDuel or something. I honestly think if he gets the job done, it's probably in round 1. We've seen him go 1 time to round 2, and that was with Andre Arlovsky, who's absolutely just abysmally old. And that fight started to get interesting, man. Like, he was in the corner, and you heard him visibly breathing for air. And my question to you guys is I propose a question, right? How much cardio could you realistically do on a leg injury? Like, are you really doing running? It's only been a year since he had that injury. Exactly today, I think it's like 364 days since the Curtis Blades fight. Tybura has proven 3-round cardio. Maybe not 5-round cardio, but it's possible we see Aspinall death gas here. So I do like that live betting angle for my dude. Big Bird. But I know you said square, but it should be a winning parlay like at the end of the day. But like I said, we're betting prices here. He's a huge dog. And I think if he gets the job done, it's probably going to be on the ground against Aspinall. He's going to have to mix in some wrestling, be able to eat the shots. Like you said, we've seen him knock down earlier in his career, but he hasn't been lately. And he's been in fights versus other heavyweights, guys like Spivak, where he was able to get Spivak, who we know for as great wrestling, right? Able to get him on the ground at certain points in that fight and hold him down there. We don't really know what like Aspinall's jiu-jitsu looks off the bottom. Of course, he's going to have the boxing advantage. He's going to have the speed advantage. We don't really get those prototypes at heavyweight, and they seem to do a good job. You know, those lighter guys at heavyweight, not real like almost heavyweights, able to move in and out on the feet. And Aspinall has great combos. He should have a clear boxing advantage here. But if Tybura is able to eat what he gives him, I think he's going to get stunned a ton of times in round one. But if he's able to eat that, right, and maybe even Aspinall chases a finish, right, gasses himself out, I think Tybura is live here. We know how volatile heavyweight fights are, and everybody and their mother, for some reason, is adding Aspinall into a parlay. For the love of God, don't add Aspinall into a parlay this weekend. This is super volatile heavyweight. Too much love on him as well at the end of the day, and there's just no reason to add that into. If you're not just going to straight bet him, there's no reason to put in a parlay. If there's no value in a straight bet, there's no value in a parlay, in my opinion. And man, I actually I like Tybura's side. I think submission at plus 1,400 is an interesting number. I think, you know, the later the fight goes, it's going to be more interesting, like plus 11,000 on him to win by sub in round 4. This fight gets to round 4. I don't think Aspinall is breathing anymore. So I think, you know, it's quite a possibility. You just throw $1 on that to win $110. I think that's a better bet. You know, or round 2 sub for plus 6,500. I see round 3, I think, is plus 6,500 also. I might be messing up these numbers, but those are huge numbers. Just throw $1 on it. Who cares at the end of the day? Like, I just think Aspinall in a big parlay for big money, coming off an injury, unproven cardio versus a guy who's 7-8 in his last 8 fights. I think that's insane. So tell me, everybody in the comments can hate on me. Tell me how dumb I am. Tell me that he's going to get washed. I really don't care, because I know heavyweight's volatile, and I know Tybura is more than a live underdog here. So if he gets washed, I'm sorry, but I think Aspinall round 1 or round 2 is a way better bet than him money line in a parlay.
Interesting. So we've got 2 conflicting takes here. Wiz, break the tie. If you have an opinion on this fight, what do you think about the main event of the evening?
Yeah, I mean, me personally, just going through a gruesome leg injury, and my friend going through the same injury that Aspinall had, seeing how quick the recovery is, kind of surprised me. You're able to walk and to lightly jog after 3 months, which I personally, as a as a fan of the sport, did not know that until I saw someone firsthand go through that same injury and start running. So I think the cardio should be fine. That fight against Arlovsky, where the cardio was a little shaky, that was 2 years and 4 months ago. But as the Jewish bettor mentioned, I don't think the money line is the right way to go if you wanted to bet this fight. I think just betting Aspinall, I think it by KO is the proper method. I know it's chalked up at minus 140 to minus 150 right now, but I don't see any other way for Aspinall to. I mean, he could win a decision, but the most likely outcome, and the books are shaded that this fight is not going to go the distance, I think it's going to be the KO. And I think it's going to be early, whether it's round 1 or round 2. Now, sure, Tybura has been on a little bit of a streak lately, but who has it really been against? I'm not going to say it's the worst competition, but Blagoy Ivanov, it took him a little bit there. He was getting hit quite a bit. And with someone with power, I think would have really hurt Tybura there. And then if you look at the Romanov fight, we know who Romanov is. Gassed out pretty quickly there after like the first half of this first round. So then you look to see what Volkov did against Tybura. Similar thing to what I think Aspinall's going to do. I think he's just going to piece him up on the feet. Much quicker striker here than Volkov, and just much more powerful in my opinion. So I think Aspinall gets this done in round 1, round 2 with a knockout.
All right, so we've got a 2-for-2 special, because I do think that, you know, this is an interesting fight, right? My first lean on this fight was, you know, I got to think that it should be a win for Tom ITD, right? Like, when you just think of at his best, what should Tom Aspinall do in a fight with Marcin Tybura? I mean, he should finish him, right? Because when you look at Marcin Tybura's game, he's done very well. He's won 7 of his last 8 fights. He's done a lot of things right, but he's not the most dynamic finisher. He doesn't always go out there and start super hot, right? Even against Romanov, arguably lost a 10-8 round in that first round, could have been a draw. So when you look at this kind of fight, all I think to myself is, what do the numbers imply? Because at the end of the day, it is a numbers game. And so let's bring up the Action Network calculator here, because I never like to speak out of my tuchus, right? Minus 450, 81.8%. This is a heavyweight fight where we're talking about an 81.8% implied win probability on a guy who just lost in 15 seconds from throwing up one kick and then the fight was over. So, again, am I saying that he's not a good fighter? No. But I'm saying this is the hardest fight he's had in the UFC, top 3 hardest fights in the UFC. Who's a better fighter that he fought so far in the UFC? Sergey Spivak on short notice, who he kneed to the body and then hit with an elbow, and the fight never really got rolling, kind of just finished him before it got going. That's kind of what I think of when I see this fight. Whereas Marcin Tybura, has he fought guys that are similar enough to Aspinall? Not Aspinall, right? Because he's a pretty unique guy at heavyweight, especially with the grappling. But when you talk about with the striking, Walt Harris goes out there, tries to unload the clip on him early. He avoids a bunch of the shots. Walt Harris gasses out. He takes him down and finishes him with ground and pound. Then he goes against, Sergey Spivak, common opponent. Yeah, he doesn't have the same dynamic finishing ability, but he just took him down over and over. The guy who's supposed to be the up-and-coming wrestler in the division, who just allowed 0 significant strikes from Derek Lewis, he got taken down all over the place by Marcin Tybura and outworked with strikes on the feet. So when I look at this fight, to your point about Muradov being like the other point in these lays, Muradov is training with Marcin Tybura, not with Tom Aspinall. He's out there in Poland getting the work in, and he's been trying to get on that grappling and that wrestling grind. And when I look at, the last couple of fights, the one mistake I made, because I bet against Tom Aspinall with Volkov, by the way. So I've been wrong before. Happy to be wrong again. It'll happen to me many more times. But when I look at that fight, I said right after the fact, you can go back and look on my Twitter. I retweeted this earlier this week, but I thought Volkov would do a better job digging underhooks because he's normally a very good guy at digging underhooks. But the speed of Aspinall just got him way off guard. So he literally got taken down before he ever saw it coming. And then on the ground, I don't think he offered much resistance, honestly. I don't think he wanted to be there anymore. I think he basically was ready to go home. And when you look at that, Volkov hasn't been submitted since 2010, but most guys don't take him down. Like Marcin Tybura struggled to take him down. But Marcin Tybura still pressured him for the whole 15 minutes in that fight, made it a really tough go. Whereas Aspinall, he bails himself out with these takedowns and submissions of low-level heavyweights. Marcin Tybura, the one thing that stood out to me in my research, never been submitted. Fought Fabricio Verdum, fought high-level guys, been around for a very long time. He's been knocked out. His chin has been a problem in the past, but he's done better at managing that. He's not self-aware, right? Marcin Tybura doesn't go, all right, let's do fisticuffs out in the middle. He's like, let me grab a hold of this guy. Let me shoot takedowns. Let me back up. Let me stay away from him, make him miss, throw it air, then throw some counter combinations. I feel like he's smart. Marcin Tybura is not a dummy. And Tom Aspinall, the first thing he said to him when they faced off at media day, he's like, wow, you lost some weight. You're not looking fat. Yeah, Marcin Tybura, he's here to win. He wants to win this fight. I don't think he's just here to be a pushover. I don't think he's here to be a lame duck. He's won 7 of his last 8 fights. It'd be pretty hard to deny him a spot in a title eliminator next if he wins this fight. So Tom Aspinall is young. He could easily put his career back together. Marcin Tybura don't have no time. If he loses this fight, his title hopes are over forever. I feel like Marcin Tybura is going to give his very best. And at plus 360, there's not much more I can ask in a volatile division where a guy is coming off a catastrophic injury. Last fight, no contact. He lost the fight. At plus 360, how wrong could I effing be? I do think that Aspinall is a dangerous guy in round 1. But to the point of many people in the chat, his corner, his team could be encouraging him. Slow down. Don't come out here and rush like we did against Blades. Take our time. Let's not get into it too much. And if he does that, then we don't know exactly what's going to happen because Tybura can keep that same pace going. He can fight for 5 rounds. He's done it before in losing efforts, but he's done it in the UFC against good guys. Are we really sure that a guy who's been submitted by Stuart Austin can grapple for 25 minutes with Marcin Tybura? Are we sure about that at this price? So this is why I thought to myself, gut level, if you just said gun to your head, who wins the fight? Tom Aspinall should win the fight. But I don't even know if Tom Aspinall is going to look like Tom Aspinall that we saw 2 fights ago. I have no idea what to expect. So when the unknowns are where they are, I think it's got to be a dogger pass situation personally. So that's what I'm looking at here. Dogger pass for me, but haven't bet the fight yet. I do think Tybura by sub 16-1, Jewish better. We got a little bit of this prop wavelength going on today, brother. But honestly, when one guy's been submitted, one guy's never been submitted, I think that's interesting. Also, I would never take the plus 350 on Aspinall by sub against a guy who's never been submitted in pro MMA. I would look at the plus 290 ends by sub, right? Why would I not give myself more outs? This other guy, Marcin Tybura, by the way, he's won a bunch of fights by sub. He's not a complete slouch there. And he's done it in the UFC, I believe, if memory serves, one time before. So I just feel like Marcin Tybura is going to make this an honest fight, especially if it gets extended. If it ends in the first round, we all know who won, right? We can all shake hands on that and be like, God bless the square boys. They got it this time. But I do think the longer the fight goes, the more interesting it gets. I think from your point, the live market is going to start coming down, down, down if Marcin Tybura is in round 2. So for me, all that's enough to say when you're surviving against Greg Hardy, when you're surviving against these guys, they're not good, but they are trying to take you out round 1, empty the clip like Aspinall's done to a lot of guys in the past. And he was able to take it and come back on them. So for me, Marcin Tybura, he's all in right now, all or nothing. And I think he's been training with the right guys. I think he's been working with good guys. And I think he's going to give his best. So plus 360. How wrong could you be? There it is,
man,
guys.
Tom Aspinall is training with the great Mick Parkin. What makes you think he can't wrestle, man?
And Phil DeFree, though. So, hey, you know.
Hey, he looked great last week, man. That's some good
That's what I'm saying. He's got the good with the bad.
I know you're about to close out, but I figured since there's 4 of us, you guys want to share like your best prop and your best bet for the card since there's 15 fights?
Absolutely. I love it. I can go all day. I just don't want to keep anybody longer than y'all expect. So y'all feel free to bail at any point, but I'm down to give best bet, best prop, whatever you guys want to do. Pierce, do you want to get us rolling, brother?
Yeah, I'll just keep it quick. So best bet, so 2 money lines. I'm liking some dogs. I'm not really liking too much favorites, but Marc Diakiese money line and Daniel Barez are probably my favorite dogs. Favorite prop, the one I got the most money on is Pogues versus Parkin goes the distance. I got it at plus money. If you can get plus money on that, I feel like it's a good bet, especially even though it's heavyweight, man. Both these guys, I know Parkin's a big finisher, but Pogues can't finish a sandwich, and those are my best bets. And I'll say one more. I'll say one more thing since I'm about to dip because it's getting late. But appreciate you for having me, Liam, Marty, JB. Nice breaking down these fights with you guys, man. And if y'all want to catch me, I'm on Bet MMA Tips, Big Bird UFC. Been tracking these bets for the past 6 months for the first time, man. I give them out for free. Just trying to make everybody money, man. And give me a follow on there if you want to make some cash. I got some good Cage Warriors bets tomorrow.
And crush it along the way, my man. So absolutely, I think it's a great use of your time, guys. If you have a BetMMA.tips, go ahead and follow Big Bird and get your knowledge up. But thank you for coming on, man. Absolute blast. Always welcome to come on the panel. Cheers to you, brother, and best of luck on all your bets this week. Jewish better.
Peace out, guys. So let's make some fucking money.
Yes,
Man,
sir.
love, dog.
Peace and love, brother. Catch you. What do you think here? Do you got a best bet, a best prop? How do you feel about this?
Yeah, that's my guy, Big Bird, right there. I appreciate that, dude. But yeah, if I gotta go with 2 best bets, man, I like Jamal Pogues as a favorite. I like Josh Coolabout and Marc Diakiese and Andre Fili as underdogs. I'll just give out 3 at this point because I love this card, man. Prop bet, ooh, very interesting, but I don't really have a prop bet on this card, so I'm not gonna force it. But if I had to pick one, that plus 1400, plus 1600, like you said on Tybura sub, at plus 11,000 by round 4. If it even gets that far, but just go by rounds at that point because I think it's 2, 3, or 4. I don't think it's gonna get all the way to 5, but if you combine those 3 at some point. Dude, it's a huge long shot. Why not put a couple schmeckles on it?
I like your style. I like the enthusiasm. Always gamble legally, responsibly within your means, we like to say. But, at the end of the day, if you're gambling for entertainment, then why not throw a couple ducats, the way of something long shot that you like. But my guy Wiz, what do you got, brother? You got a favorite? You got something that you're rolling with here? What's your favorite place, brother?
So the prop that I'm going to give out is going to be Muniz inside the distance. I just think that he has Paul Craig covered everywhere, and the fight's shaded to not go the distance. And for me, that side is going to be all Muniz. Paul Craig, yeah, he can serve up some submission equity here, but I just don't think it's very likely. And then on the money line side, I think, oh, hey, you know one of them, Liam. You know little Liam. That's my nephew.
Hey, what's up?
What's up?
All right, go play some Roblox. I'm almost done.
How many special guests are we gonna have on this show? We're setting records for the show.
Bring him on. But in the money line side, I'm gonna have to stick with Fares ZM. I think he has Jai Herbert covered here, especially with the grappling here. I think he's gonna be able to take him down and win some minutes on the mat, and that's just gonna lead to a decision or a inside the distance win, whether it's a KO. I don't think the sub is gonna be there, but whether it's KO or decision, ZM is one of my favorite money line bets.
I love it, brother. I'm going to echo a little bit of my guy Pierce's sentiment here, where it's the only bet I have on the money line right now. So I'm going to say Daniel Barez at plus 105. I do think it's going to close in the chalk range here. Probably a minus 110 pick 'em in all likelihood, but I wouldn't be surprised if he ended up closing a slight favorite here. I believe Caesars is the last place holding that plus 105. A bunch of other books have already moved to that chalk price. So personally, that's the one I'm going to give out there. In terms of the prop side of things, I'm a little bit skittish on these props. I haven't put out too many props at this point. But I'll tell you guys this. Coolabou and Murphy fight doesn't go to decision is plus 138. I thought that was interesting. I thought the Kianzad and Vieira fight doesn't go to decision at plus 250 is a little bit wide, given both girls have been knocked down in the UFC. There's some submission equity for Vieira as well. Just don't like the aggression there, but at plus 250, I do think that is a touch wide. I think that in terms of the method markets, I thought that Alvarez KO plus 550 deserved a look. Barez KO plus 600 deserved a look. ZM sub plus 700. I thought that deserved a look as well. I believe in his media day, he mentioned that he was going to try to take the fight to the ground and look, to impose his skill set there. And I do think that the club and sub is live, as well as ZM trying to force the grappling. Once you get submitted like that in the UFC, you want to get that one back. I think for Makhmud Muradov, kind of a similar vibe that I get, where I think he's going to come out here shooting a lot of takedowns to prove that he could really wrestle and grapple after getting audited by GM3. So shout out to the chat, guys. Everybody who's been rocking with us. Long show today, but a good one. Had a great panel. God bless you all. I hope that you guys enjoyed. Hope that you guys, if you have any questions, we'll fire them off in the comment section below. Let us know what your favorite props are, what your favorite bets are. If you're rocking with us, if you're fading, if you're tailing, whatever it is, or if you're just going in peace. I hope that you got some information. I hope you learned something. Hope you had a great time. And if you did, make sure that you show some love, show some support, drop a like on the video, get subscribed, because we talk about these fights each and every week. And we got a great card next week, UFC 291. Excited for that pay-per-view, excited to get back into it. So thank you guys all for the support. Let's say one time, Wiz, where can the great people that are watching this show find you and more of your great work, brother?
First and foremost, Liam, thank you for having me on. JB, it's a pleasure to meet you and looking forward to doing some more work with you in the future. And as always with Big Bird, that's my guy, and met him in person, and hopefully I can meet both of you guys in person one day. But you guys can find me at WizDoes on Twitter, on YouTube, on Bet MMA Tips. And for everyone in the chat, we might not agree on every single fight, but one thing I can say, and with certainty, is if you go on, every single one of these guys is Bet MMA Tips, profitable long-term gamblers. Myself, this year up 29.7 units at a 10% ROI, and we're looking to increase it by the end of the year, hopefully. And I already know JB and Liam picks fights. They already are some sharp motherfuckers. So without a further ado, JB, go for it.
Yo, my man, you'll keep killing them, bro. I have faith in you 100%. It was good getting on here with you. So, L'chaim, my brother, Mazel Tov. This is a good fight card, man. I was glad we agreed with a lot of the things at the same time. I was almost shocked, and my man Liam's killing it on these guys. London, this UFC London card, I saw your record for the fighters on this card, and it was absolutely insane picks on this card. So I'm looking forward that I agree with you a lot. And now that you said that you like Tybura as well, and that that would be your favorite side, I kind of am gonna take another look at it tonight, because I really do think that line's off. And man, that Pierce called it with that front kick from Marcos. If that happens, I'm coming back here and going crazy. But I'm really confident on this UFC card, guys. Last thing I'll say, bro, is I really appreciate you having me on, bro. I really appreciate you having us all on because, at the end of the day, this is your show, my man. They're coming here to watch you. I'm just a guest at the end of the day. And I know you appreciate me being on, but I appreciate you having me on. And sorry for interrupting you at the end of every single fight, my man.
Dude, wouldn't have it any other way. This is not my show. It is the people's show. Appreciate everybody that rocks with us. The chat, we have the sharpest chat in the game. I say it each and every week, but we always get more and more sharp information that proves it once again. So appreciate everybody that contributes to the show. It would not be as good as it is without your help and your contribution. So thank you guys very much. Make sure you drop some comments below. I will get back to them between now and fight time. God bless you all. Enjoy those fights. And until next time, make sure you come back because we're having all the same fun again. Take care, everybody, and good luck at UFC London. See you guys.